Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching third and final part of What If Naruto Was Framed by Hidden Leaf Village. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Where am I? Perplexed as to where she was, Ino Yamanaka slowly looked around the damp and dark area. She was certain that her jutsu had hit her target, but this location was unique. It felt different, in fact. Usually, there were items in the mindscape that looked like the owner when she entered her target's mind. When she entered Sakura's mind for the first Chunin exam, for instance, the girl's mindscape was dominated by an unhealthy fixation with Uchiha Sasuke. Every door in the rooms had his picture on it, and the color scheme was just awful. Pink doors were something she never imagined she would live to see. Despite its disarray, the place had a cozy atmosphere. Everybody has a different mind. She was aware of that, but whenever she entered someone else's thoughts, she always felt warm. Ino was aware that the mind is a sacred space and a potent weapon, but when she experienced Naruto's mind for the first time in her life, it was entirely different. In it, she was unsure of what to do. She was unable to get rid of the chilly, unsettling feeling that accompanied the numerous routes that could lead to various locations. Water drips reverberated through the empty corridors. As she began to move around, she remarked, "What a mess you got yourself into, Ino." Her father always advised her to simply follow the memories if she got lost in her thoughts. The fact that her father's words have stuck with her to this day was incredible. The brain created this precautionary measure to make it easier for it to store and process memories, keeping them hidden behind closed doors. Naruto didn't think that was the issue. Finding the correct route to the right door was the issue. She asked herself, left or right. The corridor to her left was flooded, but the path to her right was solid and dry. She made the decision to follow the dry path and began to move slowly while observing her surroundings. The floor gave way as Ino entered the right corridor for the fifth time, and she instinctively leapt off, barely returning. She watched the entire right hallway vanish before her eyes, and her eyes grew wide. Mental traps, she muttered while getting to her feet. With a sigh, Ino turned around again, squirming as she remembered the left corridor, which was her only remaining option. She wasn't particularly drawn to the dark location or the foul water, but she was in his thoughts for a reason. Now she had no intention of retreating. She asked aloud, why does Naruto have mental traps in his head? They weren't frequently utilized in people's thoughts. Furthermore, only a small number of people were able to use them properly, and if they were probably mental masters like her clan. She walked into the left corridor, swallowing her pride as a woman. Given that the right corridor was booby trapped and that a person like herself would perish if caught inside one, Ino made the decision to go slowly. Whatever harm she endured here will have an impact on her physical body outside of it, even though she was only a spirit inside someone else's head. Thus, she would die out there if she passed away in Naruto's imagination. Ino's gaze strayed across the space, which was filled with grayish doors. This must be where his memories lie. She realized that the grayish doors were reminiscent of a gloomy location. The Kyuubi wasn't Naruto. She was raised to believe that the Kyuubi was a mythical demon who existed only to torment and murder people. She was taught that in order for Konoha to live in peace, the Yondaime Hokage gave his life in order to defeat the Kyuubi. She was instructed to avoid Uzumaki Naruto since he was a dangerous youngster. Being the good girl that she was, she avoided the child named Uzumaki Naruto and complied with her elders. She was terrified when her parents told her tales of what this Uzumaki Naruto was capable of. She was sufficiently frightened by tales of mischief and perilous adventures to avoid them. As she got older, those stories led her to distance herself from Uzumaki Naruto during their academy days. She came to her own conclusions and accepted them based only on seeing the fabled child her parents had told her about. Her thoughts of him remained unchanged despite seeing him every day in the same repulsive orange jumpsuit. The same dangerous child still exists. As they grew older, her views remained unchanged, and she only greeted him when it was considered appropriate. She never questioned why Naruto was despised by everyone, and she wasn't particularly bothered by it. She only considered competing with Sakura for everything and obtaining one Uchiha Sasuke for herself. Clothes reputation guys. She became distantly acquainted with Naruto as she advanced in her ninja career. She had, in fact, completed missions with the man, but only as a team. The council, which included her father, made sure she never went with him alone. She learned why Naruto was referred to as the legendary child on that fateful day. She discovered why they all detested Naruto on that day. Since Naruto's greatest secret was revealed to the entire village in his exile on that day, the villagers dubbed it the cleansing. She could still recall what she had said that day. The hateful words that came to mind when Danzo told everyone the truth. Demon scum. were the 2 words that made her reminisce about her early years. The animosity she picked up from the elders. She didn't immediately regret what she had done until several months later. When they got to the first door, Ino's hands shook. She was unsure whether the door was a repressed memory or just another mind trap. Her body tensed, waiting for something to happen, just as her shaking hands touched the doorknob. She let go of the breath she had been holding when nothing happened. A bright white light poured out of the room as she slowly opened the door, blinding her. The door swiftly closed behind her as she felt an unseen force encircle her body and draw her in. Her vision was momentarily distorted by the bright light, which eventually faded. When it returned, she observed that the surroundings had changed. He had forgotten about her. She had no idea where she was. Now, where am I? As she attempted to regain her bearings, she thought. Although it appeared to be a small area that was somewhat similar to Konoha, it was not. Then she noticed some men approaching her holding torches. Fantastic. She was about to say, perhaps they can help me. Then she noticed that her arms were rising, and she realized that they were small. Ino was running for her life the next moment. The body fled from the group for an unknown reason, seemingly out of fear of them. It wasn't listening to her when she tried to stop it. It simply continued to run until it came to a dead end, a blind alley. As the sounds of adult males emerged at the alleyway's entrance, she could hear their labored breathing. A trace of malevolence was visible on the men's faces as they approached slowly. Hold on, I'm Ino. She realized that no sound was coming out as she was forming the words. She was trying so hard, but nothing was coming out. One of the men grinned and cracked his knuckles, saying, "Hey, the demon finally got trapped. Let us make this slow and painful, Kino," another man said. Demon. At that moment, she became aware that she was actually inside Naruto. She was experiencing this memory again. She had never experienced this before. She was usually in control of her movements when she saw someone else's memory, but in this case, she was trapped inside Naruto's body. "Please." A tiny, broken voice screamed. No more. Ino figured it had to be Naruto's. Most likely when he was younger. The man's icy tone of voice made Ino shudder. "Today, you die." She knew what they were going to do because she could tell this man was serious. Not even a genius like Shikamaru needed to know what he was going to do. She sensed every kick, cut, and bruise the group gave Naruto, as well as every punch the man threw. She sensed it, but she wasn't sure how. She sensed the group's hateful, icy glares at him. After the group had finally finished with him, the leader left Naruto to drown in a pool of his own blood after slamming him against the wall. When Ino heard Naruto's little whimpering noises, she felt helpless. A boy, unable to move, lay on the ground and wept bloody and battered. How she wished she could simply leave this body and embrace the little boy, expressing her sincere regret. Out of nowhere, Ino sensed a pull on her body. The next thing she knew, she was being thrown violently out of the room and back into the chilly, gloomy hallway. "Oh Naruto," she whispered to herself as she encircled her body in a tight hug. She was still thinking about those earlier pictures, and she'll likely continue to do so for some time. Ino glanced farther down the corridor, where an infinite number of doors lined both sides of the wall. They were most likely recollections from her early years, and she trembled at the thought of what might be behind the next door. She had more than enough experiences to last her a lifetime in that place. Ino shook her head, rejecting those ideas. Should I just leave now or, no, I will continue on. As a terrified Chunin shuddered in terror, Tsunade cried out, "What do you mean the scrolls are gone?" The restaurant collapsed under the sheer force of the Godem Hokage's fist as she slammed it against the wall. She screamed, "Who the bloody hell took it?" Tsunade's eyes flared with anger, and she gritted her teeth, saying, I doon. Don't k.knn. No who. Hokage. Sama. Just as she was about to lash out again, Jiraiya stepped in. With a note of urgency in his voice, the Toad Hermit said, "Hurry, we must go. We must retrieve it before the intruder leaves the village." "Where the hell do we start looking?" "The Hokage Tower." Tsunade nodded quickly, tossed the Chunin away, and the two vanished from the eatery. Ino tried a few more doors before she could stand it no longer. The more she saw of Naruto's memories, the more she hated herself. Villagers' beatings and sour looks, as well as older kids' ignorance and bullying. The repulsive things she saw were enough to make her throw up. She continued down the path, choosing to avoid the next set of doors. Her initial intention when she entered his thoughts was to confront him, but regrettably, she received more than she had anticipated. She skipped the next 30 or so doors before coming to a stop at a door at random. Unaware of what to anticipate, she opened the door slowly. As with the other doors, she felt herself being pulled inside and was blinded by a bright white light. Unlike the previous times, she was floating in the air rather than being imprisoned in Naruto's body. Ino looked about the room. There was no doubt that she was no longer in Konoha. She noticed 2 statues by a waterfall, and it appeared to be more like a forest area. Her eyes widened in shock as she flew closer to get a better look and saw the devastation all around. Parts of the statue were cracked and chipped, and the ground was completely destroyed. Sasuke, was Naruto's voice, shouting out the name of the Uchiha. She hurried to see what he was screaming about, and to her surprise, she saw Naruto encircled by an orange aura, which she assumed to be the chakra of the Kyuubi. Sasuke growled back, "Naruto." As Ino swiveled her head away, she gasped in surprise when she saw Sasuke's enormous claw, like wings on his back. In addition, his normally pale complexion had turned dark and gray. Ino looked up at the statues and quickly realized that she recognized them. Oh my god, this is the fight between Naruto and Sasuke during their younger days. This was the fight that Shikamaru told me about. The fight that occurred at the Valley of the End. Chidori. Rasengan. Ino returned her focus to the battle as she heard the roars of the 2 powerful techniques. She watched as Sasuke and Naruto leapt into the air, their arms glowing from their attacks. Ino flew toward the battle, screaming, "Naruto ooh," in the hopes of halting it in time. She ran in their direction and watched horrified as the last battle was fought right in front of her. Naruto's Rasengan faced off against Sasuke's Chidori. The 2 methods fought each other for supremacy. With a huge smirk on his face as he made the last push, she watched helplessly as Sasuke's technique gradually overpowered Naruto's. She put her hands to her mouth and said, "Oh my god," as Sasuke stabbed the Chidori through Naruto's chest. She let the tears fall from her eyes and screamed, "Why Naruto, why?" She missed Sasuke's brief remarks because she was distracted. "Why Dobi, because I made a promise," replying Naruto. When Ino looked up, he saw that the blonde was grinning and that blood was streaming from his mouth. "This has to be a fabrication of the truth. This has to be a lie," Ino screamed. Sasuke never impaled his arm through Naruto's chest. The reports never stated that. Shikamaru never mentioned that part to me. What the hell is going on? Sasuke pulled his arm out, and Ino slammed her fist to the ground. Naruto kept it to himself. He lied to us. The bastard lied to us. Soon after, rain started to fall from the sky, seemingly indicating that the gods were also depressed about this conflict. As Sasuke's Hite.8 fell from his head and landed beside Naruto, Ino silently sobbed. "Why?" Ino questioned before the well. Known sensation overtook her body and threw her out of the memory again. As soon as Tsunade got to her office, she exclaimed, "What the hell happened here, Kakashi?" The Godem Hokage was surprised to discover not just 1 but 2 surprises in her office, which she had assumed would still be intact. The first thing that caught her off guard was that her office had been transformed into a sky window the size of a 1-room apartment. The discovery of 3 of Konoha's most esteemed council members dead in her office was the second shock. The woman threateningly said, "You better tell me something, Kakashi." Kakashi looked around and shrugged his shoulders. "To be frank, Hokage-sama, whatever you see is whatever you get." Jiraiya folded his arms and laughed. The amount of devastation in front of him made him whistle. This was a funny thing, you had to admit. The man was silenced by Tsunade's brief glare. He was aware of her anger, but he was unaware of the intensity of it. Who did this? The question caused Kakashi to wince. He didn't want to answer that question. Well, it was like this, Sakura? Sakura was hurled into Tsunade's face as he swiftly pulled her into the frame. Sakura will explain it. Sakura responded indignantly, emphasizing the name of the offender. "When we got to your office, Shisho, the place was already ruined and destroyed." Pakun detected a faint chakra trail that belonged to one Uzumaki Naruto. Jiraiya and Tsunade both said, "Naruto was here. What the hell was he doing here?" She gave a shrug. There were bodies lying all over the hallway, all of them belonging to Anbu. My guess is that whatever he was here for, it had to be something big. Yes. Thank you for the report, but you're dismissed now, Sakura. Sakura bowed and walked away. Tsunade turned to Kakashi after waiting for Sakura to vanish. Who else was involved? And the Psiloptic ninja answered, Uchiha Sasuke. His Sharingan was carefully examining the remnants of chakra from the 2 combatants. Tsunade let out a sigh. Go fetch your former student Kakashi and make sure he comes in escorted by Anbu. He doesn't leave the village. Do you hear me? Hi. A distressed Tsunade was left alone on the rooftop as Kakashi disappeared in a cloud of smoke. She questioned, what does he want with the scroll? Jiraiya approached and placed his hand on her shoulder. They want one thing and one thing only: the destruction and salvation. Following that final recollection, Ino wandered the corridor, her mind focused on Naruto. How Naruto survived that encounter was beyond her comprehension. According to what she could see, Sasuke appeared to have punctured one of his lungs before leaving with a scratch. Did Naruto have an advanced bloodline from the Kyuubi that prevented him from dying? Although she didn't know the answer, she did know someone who did. She walked past the next 20 doors without realizing it because she was lost in her own world. Given her current luck, she reasoned that one more memory wouldn't hurt, but Naruto most likely had unpleasant memories of all of these. Mentally protecting her eyes from the white lights, she opened another door and braced herself. She looked around, wondering where she was, and when those lights went out, she appears to have been standing above the ramen stand where Naruto frequently hangs out. She observed an older Naruto sitting there contentedly chatting with the owner while eating ramen. Everything in the vicinity felt the aftershock of an unexpected explosion. When Ino realized that this memory occurred shortly before the hospital explosion, her eyes widened. After glancing down to watch Naruto tend to a fallen man, she glanced up to see the building engulfed in flames. She said, "Naruto was innocent," in a whisper. Her thoughts kept returning to the same phrase. He was innocent. It was unbelievable to her. He didn't do it, and Naruto was right. Naruto pushed a few Anbu aside and yelled angrily, "Hey, get your hands off him." As she observed Naruto's interactions with various Anbu, she saw that Naruto's eyes grew icier by the moment. By the time their conversation was over, his eyes were emotionless, a glaring stare that even caused her to wince. She heard him say, "You don't deserve to be Anbu. Your captain would be crying right now." Oh, that's correct. She believed Naruto to be the Anbu captain. She grimaced as she witnessed Naruto's vicious treatment of the Anbu squad. She decided she had seen enough and left the memory behind, heading back to the hallway. The information she had seen was still causing her mind to tremble. She had sufficient evidence to show that Naruto was innocent of the crime, but she wasn't sure how she would persuade him to return. Hell, he was likely upset that she had entered his head. The thought of what he would do to her if he ever found out made her shudder. As the echo reached Ino's ears, a furious voice yelled, "What do you mean you can't tell me anything, you blasted furball? She should be the only person in here." Two mind walkers entering the same mind at the same time would be risky. If the person chose to exact revenge on Naruto, he might sustain some long-term mental harm. She found herself at the entrance to a large room after moving through the hallway as silently as possible. Leaning forward, she could only see the back of the man's head because everything was obscured by his cloak. "I want to know what the hell is going on. This is my body if you don't remember," the man replied. "Quiet, you stupid whelp. This may be your body, but I am the lord of the demons. Do not forget your place," a deep voice yelled back. The man folded his arms and sighed, and there was a deep laugh at the same time. "Come out, Yamanaka. Come out, Mind Walker." The sound of the two voices calling her name made her heart skip a beat. They were aware of her presence. Here, Ino considered her options. They could come to her and murder her, or she could go out there and face the consequences. Determined to show this man that she was in charge, she slowly left after deciding that the first option was probably the best one. Ino was about to ask, "Who the hell are?" when the man turned around with a displeased look on his face. Naruto." Naruto asked icily, "Did you enjoy looking through my memories?" "I certainly didn't." Uncertain of what to say to this man, Ino remained silent. Even his presence was not intended. Her plans were always derailed, even though it was only supposed to be her moving through his mind at her own speed. She had been slammed into the wall across from the cage before she realized it. "I will give you to the count of 3 to get out of here, Ino. You invaded my privacy and saw some very personal memories. Be lucky that I don't feed you to him." "Him?" inquired Ino. Although she could have asked more insightful questions, given the particulars of her case, that was the only thing she could do. Naruto indicated the cage with his finger. "Kyuubi. For the first time, whelp, you're finally making sense. Feed her to me. I can't wait to taste another Mindwalker." Disagreeing with the entire notion, Ino quickly shook her head. She attempted to escape Naruto's iron grip by reaching up, but he was able to hold her tightly. "Please, Naruto, I can explain." "I'm hopeful." His icy gaze was fixed on her, as though he was considering his options. He answered slowly, "Fine. But if I don't like your answer, I'm feeding you to Kyuubi." Naruto let her go, and Ino swallowed. She saw him lean in front of the cage and retreat back to the opposite side. The demon appeared by the bars, and she saw the great cunning smile on its face. Naruto snorted at that. Oh well, just for the record, I'm not here to kill you or anything. I just want your forgiveness. That's it? You come all the way here just so you can ask that? Are you stupid? He replied. Do I look like some kind of church? I can't even set foot into a goddamn church. Ino begged, I know what we did to you were wrong. Naruto shook his head in dismay and said, Wrong? Wrong? You pathetic fools do not even know the first mistake of being wrong. It was bringing back unpleasant memories to talk to her. I'm sure you saw my memories. Those daily beatings. Those daily harassments. Did I once take revenge? He asked sheepishly. He desired that she make a guess. While she was here, he wanted her to know one thing. He wanted her to know that he would never forgive them under any circumstances. No, Ino murmured softly. That's right, no, I never once fought back. I never once thought of getting revenge, and do you know why? The girl shook her head once more. Because I thought they would change. I thought for sure they would at least acknowledge me when I became a ninja, but what did I know? These were ignorant people who were incapable of change. I even declared myself to become the next Hokage in order for them to like me, but look at where that got me. A freaking chase around the village by several Anbu. This is when Naruto laughed. This village has lived to its peak of existence. There is nothing more for it but destruction. I will be the one to bring judgment to this village. Judgment? Was Naruto genuinely discussing retaliation here? What became of the young man who aspired to be Hokage? As she gazed at the man in front of her, Ino felt powerless. His chiseling face, his cold, piercing eyes, and his perverted reasoning. She couldn't let Konoha go to the grounds, no matter how much it meant to her. Wait, Naruto, I'm sure there's a better way. Maybe. The man snapped back. No, nothing they do or say will change my mind. They can all bow to me and it still wouldn't matter. All that matters is revenge. All right, that was it. He was getting too sentimental about her, and Ino had had enough. He reminded her of Sasuke too much. With shocked looks on both of their faces, she watched as Naruto went on and on about how he was going to destroy the village and everyone in it until she had had enough and simply slapped him across the face. What the hell was that Yamanaka? She was at a loss for what to say to him. Hell, she had no idea why she had slapped him. Sorry, Ino said. You reminded me of Sasuke. Now intrigued by her analysis, Naruto arched an eyebrow. I remind you of Sasuke? That self-centered egoistical son of a bitch Teme? Well, you did for a second. Naruto took a moment to massage his swollen cheek, which was unusual for a ninja of his level. A slap was a slap, regardless of a woman's strength, and it hurt like hell. He let out a sigh as his mind returned to their earlier discussion. He whispered to himself, perhaps I overacted a little. He glanced absently at Ino, who was now concentrating on Kyuubi. The beast did not appear to frighten her. She wasn't even intimidated, in fact. Like a 6-year-old girl who wandered into a room full of books, she had an inquisitive expression in her eyes. Perhaps she was different from them, from the others. The voice of Naruto said, Yamanaka. After hearing her name, Ino turned to face Naruto after further enraged the beast by sticking her tongue out at Kyuubi. Get out of my mind and disappear. Disappear? There will come a time where I will see you again, and when that time comes, I will not hesitate to kill you. But, with a raised hand, Naruto answered, I wasn't done. If you were to disappear from Konoha and prove to me that you actually want to seek my forgiveness, I will reconsider your offer. Ino began to circle Naruto inquisitively while she was examining something. I don't know. Naruto stood there, watching her do nothing with his eyes. What are you doing, Yamanaka? As she kept going around Naruto, Ino put a finger to her chin. I still don't know why you saved me, Naruto. You remember that day, right? You saved me from Sasuke and released me as prisoner. I'm just curious to know why you did that. I needed a hostage, and as much as I hated Sakura, I did not want her as a hostage. Kill her maybe, but hostage no. Ino questioned, are you sure there's nothing more? Perhaps she could delve deeper into Naruto's mind and discover what drives him if she used her charm effectively. The world didn't know anything about the attractive man in front of her. Are you sure you didn't just save me to keep me for yourself? Naruto wasn't prepared for her question. She was aware of it, and she could see that he was as well. Womankind wins. As she waited for his response, she grinned to herself. I saw that killing you would have no effect on Konoha. Killing someone like Sasuke or Sakura might have an impact, but you, on the other hand, do not have the worth needed to impact Konoha, the man responded. Ino took his words to heart, and her eyes blazed. What did? She composed herself as she saw the man in front of her smirk. She was going to behave like a lady because she was one. Regardless of how much of a jerk the man was. I mean, you're wrong. I'm from a specialized clan. We're masters of the mind. The mind is a weak place if the person is caught off guard. As Naruto kept hurling insults, Ino clenched her teeth. A person's mind is only as strong as the person itself. If he or she is weak in spirit, the mind will be easily crushed. Enough! Shouted the Yamanaka heir. He was just making fun of her after winning her little game. You made your point. I will take you up on your offer, Naruto, but how will you find me? Then Naruto laughed at Ino's expense. Don't worry about that. Just leave it to me. Jiraiya turned his head to find out where the ringing was coming from and asked, Do you hear that, Tsunade? The Godem Hokage shouted from the other side of the wing. Hear what? I didn't hear any ringing. The Toad Sannin approached the tiny sound, which came from behind a broken bookshelf, and said, Wait. Shush for a second. Jiraiya found the source by throwing the bookshelf across the room in a single motion. What is this, Tsunade? Let me see. Tsunade easily caught the object that Jiraiya threw to her. She held it up to her eyes, and they widened. Jiraiya became irritated at being ignored after observing his teammate in a trance. Like state. Well? He inquired. It's the calling, Tsunade replied slowly. The calling? What is that? The calling of the cages, the calling of the cages. What a lame title. There were so many other better names out there you could have used. Tsunade said sharply, Jiraiya. I didn't name it, just sit down and you must never, ever speak about the things I'm about to tell you to anybody. As he sat down, Jiraiya just nodded his head, but not before observing that his old teammate was behaving strangely. On the one hand, he could actually count how many times Tsunade had been sincere. When she did become serious, it usually meant trouble, but it took a lot for her to do so. Since he had discovered that coin, her attitude had also drastically changed. But what made that coin so unique? Jiraiya squinted as he attempted to examine the silver item. It felt like a normal coin when he touched it, but only a master of Fuinjutsu could make it make a low-pitched sound. It's not easy to go through all that trouble for a single small coin. This story goes back to the time when the first 5 major villages were formed. The Shodai Kage of each village, as much as they hated each other, devised a method of contacting other Kage in time of dire trouble. The debate went on for days, discussing things about what the sign would be and what kind of trouble was required in order for this to happen. In the end, they decided that the only ones who would know about this system were the Kage and their successors. The signal was a small ringing sound emitted from this very coin. Jiraiya snorted in shock. That coin? If you're pulling my leg here. This is the second time in history that it rang. The first time was when a powerful and ancient demon was unleashed into this world, threatening to destroy it. It took the combined powers of all the Kage to defeat it and return it back to the demonic plane. Sarutobi Sensei mentioned the story in the scroll that he left behind for me, the one locked inside of a secret safe. Sitting in the wreckage of the demolished room, the two teammates gazed at the coin. The faint sounds of something ringing were audible to them. What now? Inquired the Toad Sannin. We aren't exactly on the best of terms with other Kage. It doesn't matter. Tsunade answered without hesitation. They know what must be done and we must all heed the call, no matter what. As long as you're sure, Tsunade, as long as you're sure. For the umpteenth time, Ino inquired, where are we going? She gritted her teeth in frustration when she got nothing back. What the hell, Naruto? I agreed to go with you but not when you're leaving me in the dark. This is bullshit. After determining that her partner was the strong, silent type, she glared at him, giving him the darkest, coldest look she could manage, but she was at a loss for what to do. Sighing, Ino said, I give up. Even Shino is a better conversationalist than you. And I care because? When Ino heard his voice for the first time in 2 hours, her eyes brightened with joy. Anything was preferable to walking in silence, so she didn't care if he merely threatened or insulted her. You can talk. Wishing he had remained silent, Naruto shut his mouth again. He knew he was in for a lot of trouble from the beginning of this trip, but he wasn't sure why. When he was inundated with unfinished questions, the answer came to him like a ton of bricks. I enjoy the silence, but come on, communication is the key to building a strong relationship. Does it look like I'm searching for a relationship? Aren't we becoming friends? I don't need friends. Knowing exactly what Ino was going to ask, Naruto interrupted her just as she was about to answer. No. But why? I thought we were your friends. That caused her traveling companion to laugh. In an attempt to put his thoughts into words, Naruto stopped walking and pulled his cloak closer to him. Friends? Don't make me laugh. I bet you anything in this world that no one in the village saw me as a friend. A tool most likely, but a friend? Don't be ridiculous, Yamanaka. I learned firsthand that friends are just as useless as fangirls. At first, they might seem useful and fun to have around, but when you really need them, they are nowhere to be found. The way Naruto was speaking made Ino cringe, as though he were bringing up some extremely upsetting memories. Naruto. With a dangerous tone, the blonde said, "Don't interrupt. I'm not done yet. Where was everyone when I was unfairly convicted? Where was everyone during my birthdays? Where the hell was everyone when I needed them the most?" Naruto, Ino muttered down. All of his internalized suffering, all of his misery, all of his sadness. It most likely caused more pain than a million sharp objects piercing a person's body. As he gripped his hands, attempting to control his emotions, she observed the icy, vacant look on his face. She sensed the power emanating from the faint bluish-red outline of a chakra that surrounded him. "I'm sorry, Naruto." When Naruto felt a pair of small arms encircle his torso and embrace him from behind, his eyes widened. As he stood there, finally understanding what had happened, he felt himself becoming calmer. When he turned around, he saw Ino's arms encircling him and her face streaming with tears. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry," Naruto heard. "Why are you sorry, Yamanaka? I never asked for your apology, nor do I ever want it." Shizune inquired, "Where do you think you're going, Tsunade? Sama?" The woman was taken aback to see her mentor packed and prepared to leave when she arrived at the office entrance. "Jiraiya and I have to take a trip. I'm leaving you in charge, Shizune." "How can you be so irresponsible, Tsunade? Sama, leaving at a time like this? Konoha needs you right now. The council desperately needs to be reformed and the scroll disappeared. And that's the reason why I have to go, Shizune. You remember the coin, right?" There was more than a yes in her assistant's eyes. She was obviously still able to recall it. "I'll be back in a couple of days. Try not to commit suicide before I get back." As Shizune watched her friend and mentor run off into the night, leaving her to clean up this mess, she gritted her teeth. "You better come back alive. Tsunade. Sama." Naruto kept moving quickly, pausing occasionally to see if anyone was pursuing him from behind. One Ino Yamanaka was sleeping soundly in his arms, wrapped in his cloak. She had fallen asleep standing up during their most recent conversation, and he couldn't simply leave her there. He chose to hold her in his arms because he wanted to get to his destination on time. He was still heading west, and his mind was racing with ideas. The fact that the scroll was securely in his pocket bothered him a lot. This scroll was new to him. It was not the same as the hidden village scroll he had stolen as a child. This one was smaller and radiated some sort of power. Naruto said aloud, "Just what are you planning, Pain? Don't think for a minute that I will be some expendable pawn in your little game." Naruto stopped on the ground and hid behind a tree as he attempted to locate the source of a loud thumping sound coming from the east. The sound increased in volume with every second until he looked up, startled to see a massive shadow leaping over him. Gamabunta. The enormous frog jumped over the region and headed west. Watching it fade into the distance, Naruto squinted his eyes. "I wonder where that oversized toad going in such a hurry?" With a yawn, Ino questioned, "What was that, Naruto?" Startled to see herself in his arms, she looked up and blinked a few times. Naruto answered, "Gamabunta," while continuing to gaze in the direction the toad had gone. Jiraiya. Sama's summon. "Yeah, listen, we're going to speed up the pace a little. I want to know where Gamabunta is going in such a hurry. Can you shunshin well?" Ino gave an eye roll. Imagine his questioning her about her ability to execute such a simple technique. "Of course I can." "Good, 'cause I'm not waiting." Ino was astounded by how quickly her companion vanished as Naruto suddenly took off like a bullet. She merely sighed when Naruto vanished from her view in a split second. She was lucky to have gotten enough sleep because she would not have been able to catch him if she hadn't. After 15 minutes, "Slow down, Naruto," Ino screamed in desperation. The man simply vanished again after she barely caught up to him. She fell to the ground, panting heavily and drenched in sweat as she felt her chakra reserves give out. She couldn't catch him now, so it was useless. "Geez, Yamanaka. Why are you so useless?" As she caught her breath, Ino shot back, "Shut up." When she felt two powerful arms lifting her up, she gave a little squeal. While fidgeting, Ino asked, "What do you think you're doing?" Trying to not waste any more time, Jiraiya yelled over the wind, "Are you sure this is the right way, Tsunade?" "Yes." As he stood atop Gamabunta, Jiraiya let out a sigh, his thoughts racing. He couldn't help but wonder why now and where this Kage meeting was held. Was the scroll that was taken from Konoha related to this? For being so powerless at this moment, he cursed himself. Jiraiya took great pride in being a scholar and an authority on information, in addition to being a known author of the best novel series ever created. He would be knowledgeable about anything, including women, training, and sealing. Ancient history was the one thing he couldn't figure out, but those were only the beginning. Throughout his years as a ninja, history was such a vast subject that he was unable to fully understand it, regardless of how frequently or how far he traveled. He was aware of the history of the main villages and their rulers, but anything else was merely conjecture. "Do you even know where they're meeting?" "Nope," was Tsunade's response. Seated cross-legged, the Godem gazed off into the distance. She watched the coin gleam in the early morning light while holding it in the tips of her hands. "So we're traveling blind?" "Yup." "Jiraiya!" yelled Gamabunta. The toad stopped, staring directly at its summoner. "You told me you knew where we were going. Your promise of 75 bottles of sake has just been raised to 115 bottles. Consider that your punishment for lying to me." 115? yelled Jiraiya. "That's unreasonable. 125. "What? 135. Keep talking, you old pervert, and I'll keep raising it." Jiraiya was immediately silenced by that. He sobbed quietly to himself, knowing the price of 135 bottles of sake. Tsunade shouted, "Gamabunta! Go left now." They had to go to the left because the coin she was holding abruptly fell to the left. With a grunt, the toad changed course, moving to the left. Sadly, Jiraiya approached with slouched shoulders and fake tears streaming from his eyes. He complained, "Why me?" Tsunade picked up the coin and held it at the tip of her hand again, saying, "Shut up, Jiraiya. I'm trying to concentrate." Jiraiya used this opportunity to examine the coin's odd markings in more detail. There was a circle of some kind with the kanji for fire in the middle of it. Just how does it work? Tsunade sighed. "Beats me. If we're too far off course, it'll fall off my hand in the direction that we need to go. If we're on course, it'll stay on my hand. Strange, huh?" Jiraiya said, "More like interesting. So what happens now?" "Who knows? This is the first time in over 100 years that this has happened. I guess whoever activated the coin will meet us at the location and tell us." "I still don't like this one bit, Tsunade. I don't like it either, but it must be done. This is the code that we Kage must follow and honor. We should have called in backup in case something happens." Tsunade rejected the notion with a shake of her head. "This is a law set and agreed on by the first Kage. I refuse to be the one who breaks tradition. Besides, Sarutobi Sensei also wrote in the scroll that there is nothing to worry about." Jiraiya snorted incredulously at that point. "Yeah, and I'm sure Akatsuki will just surrender themselves. Believe what you want, but until I actually see betrayal, I'll keep an open mind." While desperately clinging to Naruto, Ino yelled, "Why are you going so fast?" She was afraid because they were now moving faster than the average Kage speed. The trees were no longer even visible to her. For her, everything was a blur. Gamabunta may not be the fastest runner of the toads, but he's no slouch when it comes to leaping. One leap and he can clear 600 meters easily. Why don't you just summon the fastest toad in your arsenal and then we can do the same thing? "I'm a missing nin, remember? The toad contract is only loyal to Konoha ninjas, and when they find out that I summoned them, they will have my head." "Geez, don't they teach you anything in Konoha?" "Well, excuse me for not having a summoning contract." Ino gasped. "How much longer do we have before we catch up to them?" she asked, closing her eyes and crossing her arms over her chest. "I don't know when they're stopping. It might be minutes, hours, or even days." Ino questioned, "Are you sure you can keep this up? A person's life expectancy is significantly reduced if they exceed the limit that their body can withstand." Ino was an expert in interrogation, but she was also well versed in human anatomy. She had the knowledge of a medical ninja, even though she might not be one herself. Her job was made more enjoyable by her understanding of how the human body functioned and changed. "I'm not human, remember?" Naruto said icily. She changed the topic after noticing that she had touched a sensitive area. "So why did you join Akatsuki?" She turned her head away as she felt her cheeks flushed from his intense stare. "We're talking about you here." He responded sarcastically, "No particular reason. They were looking for muscle and I applied. I got accepted when I wiped the floor with Itachi and destroyed a statue with my bare hands." Ino rolled her eyes and said, "Haha, funny. Now seriously, why did you join up with them, Naruto? Aren't they the ones who wanted to capture you in the first place?" "That was then and this is now." Ino gasped. "Fine, Naruto. It's fine if you don't want to tell me, but just don't lie to me." She was staring at him when the blonde briefly glanced down. He teased, "You like something you see?" As if, "I think Sasuke is so much better looking." When Naruto threw her into the air, He received a loud scream from Ino. Then why don't you ask your precious Sasuke to carry you? He asked. He laughed as he accelerated, embracing her before she could fall. Did your Sasuke-chan not get you Yamanaka? I thought he would have showed up and saved you from a certain doom. As she pressed her fingernails into Naruto's flesh, Ino snapped back, not funny. Fast healing. You won't hurt me. She had completely forgotten about Naruto's abilities, darn it. Extremely quick healing and the capacity to withstand deadly blows that would otherwise kill a man. Naruto resembled a superhuman in certain ways, the kind of person any military would be happy to have on staff. They would be unstoppable with Naruto alone, and if they could get him to have offspring with different bloodlines. She was simply astounded by the idea. Naruto was worried about a lot of different situations, but they all ended with him being taken advantage of and controlled. Perhaps the best thing he could have done was to leave Konoha. Say Naruto, what did you mean by you'll take of everything when we were leaving Konoha? Let's just say, you won't be returning anytime soon. Shizune. Sama, we just found the body of one Ino Yamanaka. Shizune spat out the tea she was drinking when she heard the news, and then a Junin rushed in to deliver the bad news. What the hell do you mean? We were out surveying the area like you requested and suddenly, we found her body among the rumble, her throat slashed like the rest. Shizune told herself, no, get her to the hospital for examination. As he vanished in a whirl of leaves, the Junin replied, hi. Shizune paced the room in a panic, saying, it wasn't supposed to go down like this. She wasn't supposed to die. While he did so, what do I do now? What do I do? Damn this job. I was better off being an assistant. You what? Yelled Ino. She gave Naruto a forceful shoulder punch. How could you? Without pausing for a moment, she kept striking Naruto. Why would you even consider that? Have you even thought that maybe, just maybe, that one day I would like to go back? That's right, you didn't think. But what? You left behind a dead corpse. All my friends will think that I actually died. Imagine the surprise when they find out that I'm not dead. At least you're not dead. Arg! Cried Ino. Grasping her hands tightly, she glared at Naruto, imagining that her hands were currently around his neck, slowly and painfully squeezing it. Why couldn't you have done something less subtle? That's not my style. I swear Naruto, the first thing I'm going to do when I get off is to strangle you. I will literally strangle you until you turn blue. Since Naruto was aware that Ino would essentially fulfill that threat, he began mentally calculating a contingency plan. Before he passed away, he had a lot to do. There is so much to do. Yeah. Kill me later. Hang on, I'm taking it up another notch. His words caused Ino's eyes to widen. Another notch? You're not tired? The speed increased once more as soon as he said, nah, I'm not going all out. Ino simply closed her eyes. She was feeling a little queasy, and vomiting on herself would not help her condition. One of the women's voices said, Pain, it's almost time. They're nearly here. Yes. I know. I can feel them approaching. I'm not sure we should trust that Uzumaki just yet. I cannot read his thoughts clearly. You worry too much, Conan. It will be just fine. Are you sure you want to continue with this? Pain raised his eyebrows. It is required for the salvation of this world, Conan. Nagato would have wanted this. Conan's expression briefly darkened when he heard the name, but it quickly returned to normal. I shall make the appropriate preparations then. We're here, Jiraiya, Tsunade said abruptly. She was no longer being guided by the coin she was holding. Jiraiya yelled, Stop Gamabunta. As they looked around, the toad stopped. Looks like a wasteland. Are you sure you got the right place? Gamabunta put his tongue around Jiraiya and gave him a firm squeeze, saying, We finally agree on something, you pervert. Looks like I'm done here. Remember what you owe me, Jiraiya. I got it, hastily exclaimed Jiraiya. When the boss vanished, Jiraiya fell straight to the ground, while Tsunade leapt off Gamabunta's back and landed on the ground. The Godem searched everywhere for a place to meet, but she couldn't find anything. In every direction, there was nothing but desolate, empty wastelands. Jiraiya muttered, Looks like crap, as he picked himself up. 135 bottles of sake and all that travel for this? Without a doubt, it was not worthwhile. He could have been writing his new books at Konoha's hot springs. A voice said, Looks like you made it, from behind them. The two ninjas from Konoha leapt back and took up a defensive stance. The individual rose from the ground and raised his hands in the air, saying, Whoa, easy there. Godem Hokage of Konoha. It's been a long time, Jiraiya. Himura, Jiraiya returned the greeting slowly. Why did you stop Naruto? Ino inquired abruptly. Before she could respond to any more questions, Naruto's hand swiftly closed over her mouth. He replied, "Shush," and she heard it. Before Gamabunta vanished, he left a crater in which Naruto stood at a distance. He didn't want to approach too closely and run the risk of being found. He saw Hokage and his former sensei standing there conversing with an unfamiliar man. In the middle of a wasteland, what exactly were they doing? Ino whispered, "What's going on, Naruto?" She dropped out of Naruto's grasp and knelt beside him. "Is that Tsunade? Sama and Jiraiya?" "Sama?" "Yeah." Their eyes widened in surprise at what they saw next. The group disappeared into thin air after just standing outside for a moment. Naruto was shocked to discover nothing after looking around for any signs of chakra. To Ino's slight surprise, a Kage Bunshin materialized beside him. Astounded, Ino questioned, "You can do that without any seals?" A person has clearly mastered a technique if they can execute it without using any hand seals. Naruto muttered, "Go." The clone approached the scene and cautiously looked around for signs of human interaction. Everyone's eyes widened at the unexpected discovery when the clone's hand slipped through an invisible barrier just as he was about to give up. "Go back to base and give the scroll to the leader. Stay there for the duration until you find a perfect chance to dismiss yourself," Naruto said. Before taking off, the clone replied, "Right. Naruto, what's going on here?" "I don't know, Yamanaka, I don't know." Himura greeted the newcomers to the area by saying, "Welcome to the Château de Versailles. This is a holy place where the Kage gather in time of need. You must never speak of its location or what you see and hear to anyone. Do I make myself clear?" Jiraiya and Tsunade both nodded. Tsunade remarked, "Amazing," as she gazed in wonder. In reality, the Château de Versailles was a palace, with walls lined with gemstones and a silver structure. It was a truly amazing location to observe. Jiraiya, however, was breathing heavily due to the environment. He could smell how much gold was kept here, how rich the aura was. It was simply too much. He might be able to bring some back later for himself. Himura began to walk and opened the palace's opulent doors, saying, "Tsunade, we have to enter the chamber. We do not have time to spare. Everyone is waiting." "Let's go, Jiraiya. We came here for a reason." Together, the Sanins entered the building, each unsure of the purpose of the meeting. It might be about the world's destiny, for all they know. Not surprisingly, they were shocked when Himura pushed the doors open and let his guests into the hallowed structure. Anyone would be shocked to see such incredible infrastructure up close. He grinned to himself in private. Watching their shocked expressions never grew old. As she walked into the room, Tsunade gasped, "Is it just me, or do the rooms keep getting fancier and fancier as we go in? Holy shit. There are more jewels and gold in here than we have in Konoha combined," Jiraiya said, nodding his head. Himura walked quickly in front of them and said, "If you could please come this way, I will show you to the inner chamber." He wanted to show off the rest of the building, but he had other things that needed to be done. Jiraiya looked at Tsunade to make sure she was okay as Himura led the way inside. Although he saw that her left hand was trembling a little, he dismissed it as nervous. "I can't hold her accountable," Jiraiya reflected. He didn't see Himura stop as he was staring at Tsunade, and he bumped into the man. "Sorry." Himura opened the opulent doors to the inner chamber and said, "It is quite all right." The Kages of each large village, the most important political leaders in the country, were seated inside the room. Himura crossed the room and said, "Please have a seat, we will begin momentarily." Tsunade gave a nod and positioned herself beside Gaara, or what appeared to be him. His face was covered in bandages and bruises, so she couldn't tell for sure. "Gaara? Is that you?" Gaara nodded his head and responded with a grunt. "Yes, it is me." "What the hell happened to you? It looks like someone mauled you in a fight." Another voice responded on Gaara's behalf, saying, "Akatsuki happened." As soon as Tsunade turned her head, she recognized the individual. Jiraiya cut Tsunade off with, "Hidakatsu? Damn. Look at you. You're worse than Gaara. Damn, that Akatsuki member must have done a number on you." Leaning back in his chair, Shibata gave a feeble laugh and said, "Let's just say that the element of surprise was on their side." The Raikage, Aoi Kimberta, responded, "Enough. We have more pressing issues at hand than to talk about their shameful defeats." Himura got to his feet so that everyone could see him and said, "Indeed." He turned to Aoi, who was seated on his left side, and said, "Let's start off with an introduction before we begin. Please introduce yourself as we go around the room." Himura gestured for the next one to stand up after the Raikage, who appeared irritated by the man's request, got up and said, "I am Aoi Kimberta, the Yondaime Raikage." "Greetings. I am Shiro Yamato, the Sandaime Mizukage. Is it okay if I just introduce myself sitting down? I have trouble getting up, Shibata asked, raising his hand as Shiro sat down. Himura gave a head nod. Go right ahead, we are among friends here. I am Shibata Hidekatsu, the Yondaime Tsuchikage. Gaara got up and rolled his eyes. Even in his genin days, he never liked these trivial icebreaker games. They were really annoying. After a brief introduction, he sat down and gestured for Tsunade to leave, saying, I am Sabaku no Gaara, the Godem Kage. Tsunade got to her feet, but not before meeting the Raikage's gaze. He was also glaring at her, which was not surprising. A frown came to his face, and it made her smile broadly. I am Tsunade, the Godem Hokage. As everyone completed their introductions, all eyes returned to Himura. They wanted to know exactly who this man was. I am Sojiro Himura, the 27th guardian of this sacred place, and I am the one who summoned you. Why have you summoned us, guardian? We are not at your disposal. We do not answer to some stranger. We have countries to run and soldiers to command. I know that Kimberta.san, but you are in the inner chamber, a place where everyone is neutral. You will be respectful towards everyone. I will not tolerate anything less. Do I make myself clear? Himura responded in a tone that made the Raikage and everyone else reconsider the man. Although the man appeared weak and frail at first, there was a level of power and mystery beneath that exterior that none of them could fully understand. Crystal was the only grudging response Aoi could muster. After addressing the group once more, Himura said, now that the introductions are out of the way, let us get straight to business. With a stoic face, the guardian folded his hands and sat down. Where are the original scrolls that your predecessors have vowed to keep safe from all harm? Everyone was taken aback by the question, which naturally caught them all off guard. Well, I'm waiting. At last, Shiro replied, gone. Taken by Akatsuki. Himura exclaimed, what has become of the famed artifact, Heart of the Waterfall? Once more, there was silence in the room as nobody knew how to respond to the guardian. With a sigh, Tsunade replied, gone as well. With his eyes fixed on the cage, the guardian said, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that the organization called Akatsuki has both the scrolls and the artifact? Every cage gave a head nod. They took us by surprise. We weren't expecting them to be the one collecting the scrolls. With a note of urgency in his voice, Himura uttered, then, the day that we have feared has finally come. What are you talking about, Himura-san? What is so important about those scrolls? Replied Shiro. I do not seem to recall reading about them in any book or scrolls, Himura-san. Shiro was a learned man before he assumed the title of Mizukage. He valued knowledge more than physical strength and brains over brawn. His unconventional approach led to the construction of a massive library directly beneath his office, large enough to satiate his insatiable curiosity. That is because this is something that goes way beyond the normal scope. This is something that should never be mentioned anywhere. The information is so highly classified that it must only be committed to memory. Writing it down puts everything we stand for in jeopardy. Aoi got up from his chair and yelled, that is absurd. What is so bloody important about these scrolls? Stop leaving us in the dark and tell us already. Kimberta.san. I will not warn you again. If there is more one rude outburst from you, I cannot be held responsible for my actions. Himura said sternly. Now sit down and shut up. I do not have time to deal with your petty issues. Though they were unaware of the force behind it, everyone in the room sensed Himura's cold, murderous intent. The unfortunate victim to receive it was Aoi. They were aware of its power without having to experience it. They could tell everything they needed to know just by observing Aoi's trembling. The Raikage was known for using an iron fist to rule his village, so it said 1,000 words to see the man from Himura trembling. The contents of the scrolls themselves are not important. It doesn't matter if any organization possesses them, but when all the scrolls are combined with the artifact, it produces a unique map. Tsunade said, a map? A map to what? In response, Himura said, not what, who? It is not a treasure map that leads to untold riches. The map leads to something even greater. Jiraiya leaned forward and said, something greater than treasure? In order for Himura to see his face, he shifted his chair slightly to the left of Tsunade. What is greater than riches? The body of the Rikudo Sennin. Bah, mythological folktales. Nothing more but a bedtime story. Everyone knows that the body of the Rikudo Sennin was destroyed when he died. Himura turned to the Toad Sannin and said, Jiraiya-san. Let me assure you, I am neither a humorous person nor do I like to make up fabricated stories for my own amusement. Jiraiya retreated in his chair, aware that he had just received a warning statement. Even thinking about it made him shiver. He didn't want to experience what Aoi did. To answer your question, the legend about the Rikudo Sennin is indeed false. We only created that story to keep people from finding out the truth. If they knew the truth, the peaceful era that we live in today would have been replaced by a war-ridden battlefield. The truth is, the body of the Rikudo Sennin was never destroyed. When Jiraiya heard the news, she let out a loud choke. Are you insane? If what you're telling us is true, then that's insane. The body of the Rikudo Sennin is too valuable to be left lying around like that. What the hell were you guys thinking? Himura informed Jiraiya that he was already on his second warning by giving him a chilly, intense glare. You don't think we tried? We knew about the dangers and we tried everything to prevent it, from using fire to freezing the body in absolute zero, but nothing worked. The Sennin was able to somehow preserve his own body, and because of that, this organization was formed to protect it, to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. The first Kage knew about it and swore to protect it from evil. For the first time, Gaara raised her voice and asked, so what does that mean now? He had been quiet since the start of the meeting, speaking only when he felt compelled to. Since Akatsuki has the items, what does that mean for us as a whole? Himura grimaced. I fear that the worst has come, my Kage. The map has finally been gathered and Judgment Day has finally come. The Guardian was unaware that there were 2 additional guests when Himura opened the doors, anticipating the arrival of his last 2. Casting a double genjutsu over himself and Ino allowed Naruto to avoid detection in silence. It couldn't have concealed their chakra signature normally, but when paired with a specific technique, it made everything appear invisible. He remained a few feet behind them as they moved through the corridor in silence. His genjutsu could be dispelled by any abrupt movement. Naruto threw his arm around Ino as soon as they arrived in the inner chamber, and they leapt for the ceiling. It seemed to him that the Guardian could see right through the genjutsu because his eyes were moving around. When Naruto saw Himura staring directly at him, he held his breath, but the Guardian sat down, and the moment passed. As Ino put it, why are we here, Naruto? Aren't you a bit curious as to why Tsunade and Sennin came to this ultra-secret place? Replied Naruto. His gaze shifted from Ino to the other Kage as he noticed her nodding her head. There must be a reason why all the Kage are gathered here in this one place, and I'm willing to bet that whatever reason they're here for has to do something with those scrolls. Now shut up, it's starting. Spying on the meeting made Ino a little uneasy. She wouldn't mind if it were normal, but these people were, for crying out loud, ninjas on the Kage level. Those who were thought to be the strongest. She wasn't even certain Naruto could defeat them and escape unharmed if they were discovered. Naruto adjusted his body to become more comfortable by leaning slightly to the left. He was feeling a little uneasy about this situation for some reason. While still a genin, he had also heard the Rikudo Sennin's bedtime story. The story, as he recalls it, tells the fabled tales of the hermit and his quest for the ultimate power to bring about world peace. After reaching nirvana, the Sennin shared his wisdom with the great nations. When he discovered that the bedtime tale he had grown up hearing was untrue, it was shocking. Was the man that children looked up to a fake? There was a problem here. There's a serious problem. Naruto reviewed the details once more while he watched and waited for the Guardian to continue the conversation. Here, something didn't add up. Himura responded sorrowfully, I fear that whoever possesses the map will control the will of the Sennin. Recalling a particular conflict with Puppet Master Sasori of Akatsuki, Gaara questioned, is it because of some kind of powerful bloodline that the Sennin has? The Kage's bloodline was reputed to be just as strong in death as it was in life. The Guardian answered, no, my young Kage. He who controls the Sennin will control the world. Tsunade raised her hands in the air and exclaimed, whoa, whoa. Now wait a darn minute. The Sennin may have been a powerful man, but he was also a good man. He would never think about destroying the world. I see that some of you still don't believe me. The Rikudo Sennin was indeed one of the greatest people to ever walk this planet, giving birth to the ninjutsu that you now know, but aside from that, he was also evil. What you did not know was that the man was corrupted with power, filled with evil in his heart. He saw the ways that humanity was taking root and decided to change it with the powers he achieved. Many have gone against him and many have died, but a selected few came together and defeated the Sennin in battle. The man swore that one day, he will come back, and when he does, he will have his revenge. That is why we don't speak about the man. So he could disappear. To be forgotten. Gaara surmised, but you failed. At some point in time, his name resurfaced, and now, Akatsuki is trying to claim his body for their own purpose. Exactly, and if they find the Sennin before we do, we would have a disaster of epic proportions on our hands. With a cunning grin starting to form on his face, Aoi questioned, Should we prepare our armies for war? His army was the best in terms of the number of capable soldiers. The Guardian gave a headshake. It doesn't matter how many men you send, once they have the Sennin under their control, they would just be slaughtered. Jiraiya said, "You make him sound like the man's coming back from the dead. That's not possible unless you're Orochimaru. But how alive are we in reality? Does one need to speak and think to be fully alive? No, my friend. He is alive as any living thing. The difference between him and us is that we have a soul. So how are they going to control the Sennin? I'm sure the man took precautionary measures to prevent something like that. By performing a blood ritual that requires a living sacrifice." Ino inquired, "Did you hear that, Naruto? They're reviving a dead man? And you're working for something like that? Is that what you really wanted? To be a part of something that brings the world to its knees?" Deep in contemplation, Naruto said nothing. When he responded, he noticed that Ino was looking at him fixedly. "I will make Konoha pay, and if I must be a part of Pain's plan, then so be it." What if you're the one they sacrifice? It was an unexpected question for Naruto. He had never considered it from that perspective. His eyes glowed with rage the more he considered it. He shook his head and laughed, saying, "Pain, you bastard." It was now reasonable to believe that Pain would require a sacrifice in order to bring the fallen Sennin back to life. In his mind, Naruto rapidly created a list of all the Akatsuki members, marking each one off according to the man's importance. The immortal duo was the name given to Hidan and Kakuzu. Not because they could be killed, but because they were too valuable to be killed. Pain was determined to keep those pawns in his line of sight at all costs. Zetsu and Tobi came next on that list. These two were the group's spies, and since they possess special abilities that Pain needed, they can also be crossed off that list. Itachi was in a special position because he was last on that list. In addition to his valuable knowledge, the man possessed the Mangekyo Sharingan. It was essentially reduced to him and Deidara after going through that extremely short list, but given his luck, it would undoubtedly be him. The thought lingered in Naruto's mind, and he gripped his knuckles tightly. He wouldn't be the one. He was going to make sure it wasn't him because he would be damned if it was. "You're a devious man, Pain, but too bad I'm onto you. I will not be used as bait in your little game. Never again will I be used like a measly pawn. We'll see how far you go," Naruto was whispering to himself. He glanced at Ino, who was still paying close attention to the conversation, and turned his head slightly. In a whisper into her ear, Naruto said, "Yamanaka. I changed my mind. You're not coming with me anymore." "How do we stop them then? They have the map. They have a head start. An advantage," replied Tsunade. "Do not fret, my friends. Did you think I would be unprepared? We have the map sealed inside a scroll for emergency purposes like this, but it would take some time to unseal it." "Then we should get a move on," Shibata responded. "No, we should bide our time wisely. We're dealing with something beyond our understanding. If we make a mistake, it can otherwise prove fatal." Weak argument coming from someone who got their ass kicked. "I say we gather our forces and launch an attack on Akatsuki immediately," Aoi countered. "No, you naive fool," bellowed the Guardian. "We cannot move until they do. Only those with the actual map can locate the key to opening the gate." Tsunade let out a sigh. "So we wait and send in our best warriors?" Himura gave a headshake. "No, we send in the best of the best. The Rikudo Sennin was one of the greatest warriors to ever walk this planet. He can probably take all of us on and still win. We need to plan carefully. This is something that we cannot afford to lose." Aoi questioned, "What do you suggest then, Guardian? Should we sit here and twiddle our thumbs?" Himura rose from his chair with a snort. "While I'm performing the unsealing ritual, you will head back to your respective villages and select your strongest warriors. Let them know of the dangers that they will face, and when the time is right, I will summon all of you again." Before heading home, the Kage stood up and bowed their head in respect. When they were out of the main room, Tsunade drew Jiraiya aside. "I want him back now," she exclaimed, speaking in a low voice. "Who?" Jiraiya inquired, perplexed by her query. "Who else do you think stands a chance? He was the strongest in our village and still is. I want him back. I want Uzumaki Naruto." The news choked Jiraiya. "Are you insane? Do you not remember what the boy did in Konoha? I'm not going to risk my neck for a village who won't appreciate it." Tsunade let out a sigh. "I remember what happened, but surely he can understand that the fate of the world is riding on this plan. Look, let's just go back to Konoha and think about this carefully. You're tired. I'm tired. Everyone's tired right now." Jiraiya guided his emotionally spent friend back to Konoha by placing one arm over her shoulder. Ino said in a low voice, "Well, What now? Even though the cage had already left the room, moving at this moment was still dangerous. They might still be talking about what happened outside, and if they were discovered, things might get really complicated. As he moved deftly across the ceiling, Naruto responded, "We have to leave quietly and then you're going back to Konoha." Given that he was a ninja, it wasn't difficult, but moving with someone else took a little longer. Ino yelled, "Why?" In response. She wasn't going to give up now after traveling this far and hearing all of that. She had a gut instinct that told her not to return home because lives were on the line. Because it's not safe anymore. Have you forgotten about the fake corpse of me you left behind? She didn't have to remind him. Of course he did remember. In any case, he was the one who organized it. It was relatively simple to combine a basic henge on a deceased chunin. The henge would have worn off by now. Go back home to your family. I can't go back there. Her sudden outburst was obvious to Naruto without him having to turn around. He just hit a sensitive spot, and it doesn't take an expert to see that. What happened, Yamanaka? There's something you're not telling me and I don't like being kept in the dark. I can't go back to Konoha, Naruto replied. You don't have a choice. From this point on, the trip is going to be way too dangerous for you. I cannot waste my time looking out for you. You don't understand, Naruto sternly remarked. What's there to understand? Go back home to your family. Why was this so difficult to understand? He had offered her the chance to flee back to her home, where she would be secure. Any reasonable person would have accepted his offer. Ino muttered something that Naruto couldn't quite make out. What did you say? My parents aren't around anymore, they passed away a few months ago. Naruto was stopped in his tracks by that. He had a dim memory of Ino's parents prior to his banishment. Even though they didn't like him, they didn't hate him for being the demon. All they were doing was guarding their only daughter. What happened? Ino bit her lip as she struggled to contain her tears. She could still clearly remember that day. Rewind. Miss Yamanaka. Ino looked up from the flower shop and said, yes? She wiped her hands and turned to face her guest. What can I do for you? Hokage. Sama requests your presence in her office immediately. A messenger was dropping off missions for Ino in the shop, just like any other day, but she had no idea that today was different. Sensing that something wasn't right today, the blonde hurried to the tower. Something was wrong, according to the gut instinct she had. She pushed the doors open, her hands shaking. She saw Tsunade sitting there looking serious when she first entered. I'm sorry, Ino. Her mounting anxiety was not alleviated by that. What are you talking about, Hokage? Sama? She asked frantically, her fears eating at her heart. Your parents, they died bravely on the battlefield. Although she was aware that this would occur, she found it hard to comprehend how quickly it would happen. She didn't want to believe it, but she couldn't believe it either. Everything was getting blurry as her tears began to cloud her vision. How? It was supposed to be a simple C-rank mission to return something to Suna, but somewhere along the way, they were ambushed by a group of renegade ninjas. They fought against the enemy with everything they had, but in the end, they were tortured and killed. I'm so sorry, Ino. Shocked by the news, Ino lost his words. No. Tsunade, who understood the pain all too well, pulled Ino into a much-needed embrace. She had personally gone through it once before. They were the bravest people I have ever known. But rest assured, Ino. I will hunt down those people responsible. You have my word as Hokage, Ino. Flashback termination. Yamanaka, Naruto began to reveal. I don't understand, Ino uttered, her eyes still streaming down her cheeks. How could something happen to them? They were the nicest people you could ever meet. Naruto was unable to alleviate the pain with any words. He was all too familiar with the sensation. Yamanaka. I just wished I said goodbye to them. Naruto turned around and saw tears streaming down her cheeks, and he sighed softly. He approached her and then did something that startled them both. He drew her into a tight embrace in a single motion. Shish, it's going to be okay. The hug's simplicity was a powerful statement. She sobbed quietly on Naruto's shoulder without saying another word. Hold on, we're leaving this place. Unable to find her voice, Ino could only nod her head. Because they had already left the location before she realized it. 1 week later. Are you sure you don't wish to reconsider, Gaara? Without hesitation, the Kage shook his head. The man's request didn't even need to cross his mind. This request seemed like just another grain of sand in the vast desert to him. The Godem Kage of Suna. As I said before, you are my friend and friends, will help each other in times of need. The formerly reclusive Kage took a while to compose the appropriate words, but when he did, they were typically strong and profound. The man next to him merely grinned from beneath his hood. Friends, help each other in times of need. He went on, I remember that saying, it was back then when I was naive. If someone said that to me now, I would have laughed and walked away, but because it is you, I will trust you. As the two strolled through Suna's streets and turned right toward the main gates, Gaara simply nodded his head. There was a reason the man had picked this specific time, and Gaara had frequently pondered why he enjoyed the night so much. Is his motivation the same as his? The Kage gave a headshake. The night provided him with something that the day was unable to provide: comfort. Gaara spent the majority of his childhood without experiencing human affection. As a demon who was only capable of murder, he was viewed as a monster. He was feared back then, and he frequently wandered the streets by himself, believing that this was his fate: a heartless murderer. He was nothing more than a murderer during the day, but at night, when the cries and terrified gaze subsided, he was just a young boy, silently pleading for recognition. The recognition of existence. As long as there was someone out there who accepted him for who he was at night, he didn't care if he was by himself during the day. He only realized how many people believed in him after that man rescued him from his own personal demon. Before long, the day turned into the night and the night into the day. As the two of them strolled down the alleyway, Gaara asked, the question still bothering him, why do you like the night? Naruto, what makes you always decide to act in secret? The man laughed softly as he glanced at the person walking next to him. Naruto paused and gazed up at the night sky, feeling at peace with himself. During the day, the villagers would look at me with their hateful glares, spitting on me as I walked by, but no matter how much it hurt, I kept walking, because I know the darkness will come and save me. The darkness was my first friend. It was the only time when I was free from those scornful eyes. It was in the darkness that made me feel safe, hiding me in a place where no one could find me, Naruto said. Whereas the day cannot shelter me, the night did. I was able to survive for so long because of the night. The two men didn't say anything more after Naruto finished his explanation because they understood each other completely and knew that while their futures were different, their pasts were similar. Is she aware of your departure? It's better this way, Naruto said, shaking his head. I am unable to take her with me to my destination. You are aware that she will despise you. This will work better. If she stays with me, we both know what will happen. She isn't a child, Naruto, the Kage sighed. Give her the freedom to decide for herself. Gaara, when did you start acting like the grown-up here? She doesn't know what my life has been like, and I don't plan on telling her, asked Naruto. Her hands aren't stained yet, but mine are so bloody that I could dye them the color of the ocean. That's how I want it to remain. What am I supposed to tell her? Konoha was destroyed by you, Gaara retorted cynically. That's not a bad idea, Naruto laughed. Naruto. Tell her that I will be back for her once my goals are fulfilled. The Kage stood with his arms folded inside his robes as the two approached the main gates. Naruto. A war is about to break out. Which side will you support? The blonde cocked his head slightly and grinned, saying, my own side. Naruto drew his own cloak nearer before vanishing in a tiny sand tornado. Sama Kage. A guard yelled, we are being approached by an army. Which village are they from? Gaara asked, his eyes narrowing. Konoha. Gaara's eyes widened slightly as she heard the guard's name. This is not good, she said. Shisho. Do you think leaving Konohamaru in charge was a good idea? Sakura inquired. I am aware that he is the grandson of the third, but he still lacks experience. Isn't it preferable to leave a council member in charge? Sakura, you should stop worrying about things that don't affect you. Everything will be fine in Konohamaru. He has Shizune with him. With two scrolls in her hands, Tsunade replied, follow your own path. Sakura moved away from Tsunade and approached Kakashi, who was standing firmly behind Sasuke, watching over their prisoner. She frowned as she thought back to the incident that caused his incarceration to be so suspenseful. Rewind. Tsunade sat at her desk, folding her hands, mentally preparing for this task, her hands so tightly gripped, nearly white with blood loss. She gritted her teeth as the door slowly opened, revealing Morino Ibiki and a very arrogant-looking Uchiha Sasuke. A knock on the door startled her out of her reverie. Hokage. Sama, the Uchiha said in a lighthearted greeting, his tone betraying a lack of deference. Stupid. Ibiki slapped Sasuke across the face and growled, you will greet your Hokage with respect. Seeing the slap coming, Sasuke cocked his head sideways and grinned at Ibiki, asking, is that all you got? You don't hit as hard as my grandmother does. Why you? Tsunade slammed her hands on the table to draw Sasuke's attention just as Ibiki was ready to punch him. As much as I want to see Ibiki beat the snot out of you Uchiha, You're here for a different reason today. What do you need me for, Hokage? Sama, snorted Sasuke as he slowly got up from the ground. Ibiki violently pulled on his prisoner's chain, knocking him back to the ground. Uchiha, 3 hours today. 3 hours. I should let your pathetic life rot down there in prison, Uchiha, but there's a war approaching, Uchiha, Tsunade said, slowly rising to her feet and glaring at Sasuke. Sasuke interrupted Tsunade mid-sentence and mockingly responded, you know that I'm the best fighter you got. You need me. Even though Tsunade wanted to laugh in his face, she refrained from doing so because she knew that the Uchiha bloodline is among the strongest to have ever come out of Konoha and that having the Sharingan on their side would be beneficial. She needed to play her cards right to get him to follow her orders because she didn't want to worry about a ninja going rogue in the middle of battle. Uchiha, I don't need you. Why would I require you? Have you forgotten that Kakashi possesses the Sharingan as well? He may only have one, but he's just as good as you, Tsunade said. With a hollow laugh, Sasuke said, that's a good one. Although Kakashi possesses the Sharingan, he is unable to fully utilize it. Admit it. You know what, you need me on the front lines. I would rather rot in prison than assist you. Itachi's going to be there. When Sasuke heard his older brother's name, his eyes widened. It was the name that had caused him all of his pain and suffering, the name that he had sworn he would kill him one day. You will let me fight him. You are in no positions to make demands, Uchiha, Tsunade snarled. I must battle him. In an attempt to get chakra to look into his eyes, Sasuke pulled on the chains and yelled. Ibiki yanked back the chains after noticing what his prisoner was doing. Did you forget? Uchiha, these chains were made just for you. Like a leech, they react to any movement of your body's chakras and suck it dry. Sasuke sank to the ground, his onyx eyes fixed on the ground as he felt his chakra ebbing away. Let me fight him and I will serve under you, he muttered. Sasuke looked up instantly when Tsunade said, no, you will fight our enemies, and if Itachi is one of them, then you will go fight. He would sell his soul to the devil in order to have the opportunity to exact revenge on Itachi. You got yourself a deal. End of flashback. Even though Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, and Kurenai were all around him, the Uchiha was upholding their agreement thus far. As an extra precaution, she had Jiraiya place a seal on him that, when activated, would instantly emit high voltages of electricity. We will never make it if we don't make it now, Sasuke yelled. Hurry your asses up. One of the ninjas yelled, eat sand, Uchiha. We don't follow your orders. Come over here and say that to my face, you scum, grinned the Uchiha. He taunted, I'll even give you a free hit. The ninja took a step back, taken aback by the words, unsure whether to move forward or retreat, but it was clear that he would lose either way. Looking around, Sasuke noticed that the ninja were retreating. Anyone else? He grinned arrogantly when he realized that no one else was brave enough to take the initiative. That's what I thought, he said. All of you are cowards. With every step he took, he got closer to his goal, which would soon be realized as he kept moving forward and saw the gates of Suna just ahead. With a look of disapproval on his face, Jiraiya stood beside Tsunade and asked, are you certain that allowing him to accompany us was a smart decision? Can we rely on anyone else? Our trump card is him. If he's our trump card, then I rather fold right now. We're growing too old for this, Jiraiya, Tsunade sighed. What other option did I actually have? He is among our strongest fighters, which is exactly what we needed. I still say we should have risked it and let him rot in jail, the Toad Sanin said with a grudging nod. You could take a chance, but I wouldn't wager on that. I can't risk that away because I have too many lives at stake. Tsunade found herself staring at her teammate and noticing for the first time that his eyes had changed from their usual youthful orbs to dull ones, as if his age had finally caught up with his body. Jiraiya remained silent as he stared straight ahead, watching the Konoha army approach the gates. Standing in the moonlight, she could see that he was exhausted, even from his absurd attire, his body and soul worn out from all the fighting. His mask briefly vanished, but that was all she needed to learn more about him. Each of the 4 Junins, including Sakura and Sasuke, kept watch over their prisoner, while Tsunade and Jiraiya took up the rear. When the group finally arrived at the gate, Sasuke looked up to see a guard standing in the tower. He ordered, open up. Open the gate. The guard moved to the side and peered down at the Konoha army, who were standing there. Upon realizing that his guests were just them, he dismissed them and went on his patrol. At the man's behavior, Kiba snarled, what the hell? When he saw us, he left. This is nonsense. He grabbed one of the stones off the ground and hurled it at the guard. Sasuke shoved Kiba to one side, furious at the man's behavior, and said, last warning. The guard saw the projectile coming and easily avoided it, continuing to ignore the outsiders. "Open it up, or I'll open it for you." Despite his strict orders from his lord to keep everyone out, including Konoha, the guard continued to ignore them. Kaden. Karyu Enden. Hearing someone yell out the name of the jutsu caused the guard's eyes to widen, and as it approached, he noticed a bright glow in the middle of the night. Since there was not enough time to alert the other guards, he did the only thing he could. He put his hands to his face to protect himself from the attack, and if he survived, he would sound the alarms. He waited for the attack to come, but it never did. Instead, a tremendous gust of wind tamed the fiery dragon and turned it back to ash by blocking and dispelling the attack. "I recognize that attack anywhere, Uchiha," Gaara said dangerously. "I don't appreciate you harming my ninjas. Are you asking for a war between us?" The gates suddenly opened, revealing a very irritated Kage. With a sly smile, Sasuke answered, "War? Why do you think you can defeat us? Not even you can defeat me. Without your demon, you are nothing. I can do it again because I have already done it once." Unfazed by the Uchiha's threats, Gaara gradually shifted his focus to a Hokage who was moving towards Sasuke and asked, "What does the powerful Godem Hokage of Konoha think? Do you wish to put us at risk of going to war? Your plate is already full of more than you can manage?" "We don't want war," Tsunade said, shaking her head. "In order to allow our soldiers to rest, we are requesting permission to stay for one night." "No, what?" Tsunade inquired, taken aback by his response. Surely, he must realize that they were allies in this war, even though they weren't exactly on the best of terms. "I declined. Konoha is not allowed in Suna, and I will consider it a declaration of war between our villages, and I will not think twice about crushing you if your ninjas dare to enter." "Crush us? You are only one man," Sasuke sneered. "Right now, we have an army that can take Suna. We could occupy this location by force if we so desired." "Uchiha. And who authorized you to speak for me?" "I am the Hokage, and I will make the decisions," Tsunade inquired icily. "Does that make sense?" The icy, irate expression was all Sasuke needed to back off, and as he did, he frowned when he noticed Gaara's amused expression. "She just saved you from an ass kicking." "Uchiha, I beg to differ. She just spared you from being put to death." "I like seeing you give Demon Boy a try. You say a lot, but we both know that I'm the stronger of the two of us." Everyone in the vicinity was taken aback by the Kage's behavior, and even Tsunade, who had known Gaara since the beginning of his career, had never seen him laugh like this. Perhaps a little smile or a chuckle here and there, but never a genuine laugh. Gaara simply laughed for the first time in his life. In between breaths, Gaara remarked, "You crack me up, Uchiha. You say you can defeat Suna and then you say you're going to kick my ass, but the very people you believe to be your allies are holding you back. My only question for you now is, how low can Uchiha really go?" Sasuke felt the power from the curse seal acting up, pleading to be released, but he was unable to do so. If he acted on his impulse, those around him would not hesitate to kill him immediately. It was one thing to see the very enemy in front of him making remarks about his pride, but it was unacceptable to do nothing about it. Sasuke calmed down and played his game, which was all he could do. "You're all talking, Gaara. You are merely a mediocre ninja. Without exerting myself, I could kick your ass all the way back to Kumo and back." With his arms folded across his chest and his gaze fixed on the Konoha ninjas, Gaara stood there looking as though he was waiting for something, a faint smile adorning his face. "However, are you able to kick my ass?" The sound of a voice that seemed strangely familiar but that no one could identify was heard in the desert breeze, and everyone began searching for it. Returning his focus to Gaara, Sasuke squinted his eyes and said, using small time tactics, "You've reached a new low, Demon Boy." The sounds of a cloak flapping freely against the night breeze distracted everyone's attention from the newcomer, and Gaara, instead of getting the verbal response he desired, simply stepped aside, indicating that he was not alone in this standoff. When they recognized the cloak's design, they gasped. It was a notorious design that terrified many ninjas, even the tough ones, who were well known throughout the world and only had one name: Akatsuki. They might be walking into an ambush if they weren't careful, but seeing one here meant that Akatsuki was on them, even though only Gaara knew who this Akatsuki member was. Only seconds had gone by after what seemed like hours when the man in the Akatsuki robes said, "What? No salutations to your erstwhile comrade." His voice was devoid of all emotion, as though he were some kind of robot. "You," hissed Sasuke. "You're willing to take in a missing nin? Gaara, you surprise me. For heaven's sake, you are a Kage," yelled Sakura. "Protecting your village from people like them is your responsibility. Missing nin? Is the missing nin somewhere? I don't see one here, said Gaara, feigning to look around. Can you spot a Kenshi? The guard, Kenshi, merely shook his head, saying, I don't Kage. Sama. Among us, I only see friends. Everyone in Suna was aware of this specific missing nin, and although the outside world views him as dangerous and has designated him for execution, Suna saw him as one of their own. An individual deserving of being granted honorary citizenship. One man had repeatedly saved their village, and another had saved their Kage. Konoha. There you have it. There isn't a missing nin among us. All we see is a brother. Slowly, the stranger reached for his straw hat and took it off, letting everyone know who he was. The last person Tsunade expected to see and the last person she ever wanted to face was this Akatsuki member, and when she saw who they were, her heart fell. She muttered, Naruto, out. The Konoha ninjas were shocked to learn that this man was none other than Uzumaki Naruto, the former Enbu captain known as the Silent Storm. The sight of his icy azure eyes chilled them to their core. With a chilly, cynical smirk that exposed his teeth, Naruto said, I will take all of you on myself. If you want to go to war so badly, then let's go. Tsunade saw that her ninjas were simply shaking with fear, and that her Junins were not doing any better. She could see that each of them was a little uneasy, and that if they fought now, they would be completely defeated. We will take our leave, but you have a pledge to uphold Gaara, she declared. You made your point very clear. Keep that in mind. Jiraiya took one last look at his former apprentice and nodded, and Naruto gave him one too. The Godem Hokage took one last look at her surrogate grandson and painfully forced herself to leave. Everyone leave now. Only a handful of ninjas actually heard the Toad Sanin's loud command. The rest were too terrified to move after hearing it. What? Will you two continue to fight? Stupid people. Get out of here. When Jiraiya noticed Gaara and Naruto making hand gestures at the same time, he yelled. We'll force you to move if you refuse to. Naruto and Gaara both yelled. Naruto no Sabaku. When Jiraiya saw a massive twister emerge from the earth and mix with the sand, his eyes widened. The Konoha ninjas suffered a terrible outcome as the natural force pushed them back. A dangerous tactic that almost destroyed their army if they hadn't reacted in time. Some were being thrown violently into the air, while others were being slammed into the ground and buried by the sand. Powerful. As he tried to stay motionless, Jiraiya muttered, finding it more difficult with every second that went by. It was a technique that was truly worthy of those two. By fusing their two natural elements, they have produced a dangerous maelstrom that, if unprepared, could destroy anything or anyone. When all the Konoha ninja were eventually thrown out by the desert storm, Tsunade spat the sand from her mouth and got back up, prepared to assume leadership once more. We're getting back together now, she yelled angrily. Whatever technique they employed was obviously dangerous because her ninjas were in perfect condition when they left Konoha, but now they couldn't even make it across the desert. Knowing what lay ahead for her, the Godem Hokage gazed up at the night sky with a terrified expression in her eyes. She was going to fight him and possibly kill him, there was no question about that. Naruto Uzumaki, after a week. When you need time the most, have you ever wondered where it truly goes? Of course I have. Because time was so plentiful, I used to take it for granted, never realizing that it was working against me. I always thought that time was on my side, but as I stood here in this room, I understood that time is not on my side at all. Actually, the exact opposite is true. What might have transpired if time had been on my side was beyond my comprehension. Would I have spent the rest of the week with Gaara? There were countless options and thoughts, but one thing was certain. If I didn't have to be here, I wouldn't be. Following our most recent conflict with Konoha, he was requesting my presence. He was beckoning me to return. Returning to the base, so I went out. Not voluntarily. I only received a few words in return, and we vanished into a remote area that not even the other Akatsuki members were aware of. He told me something about something, I remember, but I ignored him. I still had absolutely no faith in him. Are you ready to start, Uzumaki? Once more, he speaks in his typical stoic manner. Tell me again why we're doing this. Preparation. For what? Pain gazed at the blonde Jinchuriki with narrowed eyes. That is none of your concern. What is of your concern is completing this training. Naruto let out a sigh. Then for your sake, I better hope you thought this through. Pain swiftly went through a number of hand seals before multiple puffs of smoke appeared beside him. Your petty thoughts do not concern me. I do not care what you think. Tensing his muscles, Naruto awaited the appearance of whatever it was that Pain summoned. 5 bodies appeared next to the first one after the smoke cleared. They were all similar in context, but upon closer inspection, Naruto saw that they were also very different from the others. Their facial markings were the only distinguishing characteristics. Welcome to Hell Uzumaki. Before Pain hurried from his position and began the vicious attack on the blonde Jinchuriki, Naruto heard those final words. Naruto thought the man would be excellent, but seeing it for himself made him respect the Akatsuki leader more. Sensing the force of every blow, Naruto was able to leap away and duck beneath Pain's right elbow, allowing himself time to recover. Pain just stood there, taunting him with those eyes, and he found himself panting a little. Is that all you have, Uzumaki? Those rumors about you must certainly be exaggerated. Naruto stood back up with a sneer. Then let me show you why I was given the title of the Silent Storm. Only a faint dust trail remained after the blonde Jinchuriki left his position. A moment later, Naruto emerged from behind Pain, his elbow ready to slam into the neck. He swung down with insufficient force to deliver a lethal blow, but Pain blocked the elbow strike with a palm-up shot before it could make contact. When Naruto saw that one hand was used to halt his attack, his eyes widened. The tiny dust particles in the room were swept away by the force of the attack. Pathetic. Let me show you what it really means to be a storm. Inside Kage chambers, Tsunade no Sato. When Ino asked, "Where is he?" The last time she had heard that her friend had flown the coup was a week ago. Don't even think about using that sand of yours to escape. Woman, if you don't stop talking, not even the heavens themselves would spare you from my wrath, Gaara said with a sigh while massaging his temples. Gaara-kun. Reprimanded Matsui. Ino has been patient with you long enough. I believe it's time you over. No, both of us, some answers. The bad timing was cursed by the Kage. Here he was, sitting in his office with two irate women present and no paperwork. Gazing up, Gaara scrutinized his wife and his friend's conditional girlfriend. It would mean hell for him if he said anything inappropriate, based on their looks. The door and a single window were beyond the two women. Can he make it out of this third circle of hell? Can he get his freedom by avoiding these two women? A good 5 meters separated the two, as his eyes swiftly determined. He can, indeed. His confidence increased as he examined his freedom more. Without taking her eyes off the slick Kage, Ino answered, "The windows and door are sealed. Your wife suggested sealing them up, seeing as how you once escaped through them." Gaara looked in wonder at his wife. Why? Why would you do something that? Matsui gave her husband a charming smile. "Dear, a woman cannot just stand by and let another woman suffer. It's against our oath as women." Gaara sank back in his chair with a groan. The Kage muttered, "Fine, Yamanaka. You win. What can I do for you today? Is this what it truly means to be helpless? Where is Naruto?" "Naruto? Why would you ask about him? I thought the message was clear. He wants nothing to do with you. That's why he took off and left." As Ino began to feel the impact of Gaara's words, her eyes gradually widened. She felt her world breaking into a million pieces, like a broken mirror, as time slowed down. She knew the truth in her heart. He went out. He had abandoned her here by herself. Did he really not give a damn about everything they had done together? Was the time they spent together unimportant to the heartless bastard? Did he care about anything anymore? Was he only motivated to live for retribution? She tried to stop herself from crying by biting her lips. Did he leave a message for me? Gaara lifted his chin above his arms and sighed, and if he didn't, what would you do? Matsui watched the scene play out in front of her from behind Ino. Although she had no right to interrupt this discussion, she would be there for Ino, encouraging her in silence as she went. What if he never wanted to see you again? Gaara went on. What if he left you behind on purpose because he felt that you were nothing more than a liability? Gaara-kun. Matsui opened her mouth to say something, but Gaara stopped her with a raised hand. What would you do then, Yamanaka? Gaara calmly watched her as an impartial person rather than a friend while he awaited her response. Although he sounded like a heartless jerk and was tough, this was an important moment. She would not be able to survive the next few months if he gave her the answers and her spirit was weak. Unbeknownst to the general public, he was secretly preparing his ninjas and his people for every scenario that might arise because a war was imminent. With a small smile, Matsui placed a gentle hand on Ino's shoulder. She muttered, "It's okay. Gaara-kun is a reasonable man. Tell him how you truly feel." Ino hesitated a moment, summoning the words from deep within her. "I want to see him again. Even if it implies that there's a remote chance he doesn't want to see you again? My father and mother died, and I don't want to be alone anymore," Ino said with a sorrowful smile, adding, "I want to see Naruto. He is my only remaining possession, and I will not allow him to leave me." Beyond his icy exterior, he is just like me. He is exceptional because he bears the weight of loneliness. If there is anything I can do to help him, it would be to share the burden he bears, as he is the one who knows the anguish of loneliness the best. This girl, Yamanaka Ino, was truly unique. Gaara could understand why his enigmatic friend was interested in her. He got up and grinned slowly, saying, "Well said, Ino." "You called me by my first name," the girl said, her eyes widening. "I only address people by their first name out of deference. I will tell you everything because you have earned my respect today." Matsui clapped her hands lightly, and Ino bowed gratefully. Gaara left his desk and gazed out the window, saying, "Naruto has left Suna, but not because he wanted to leave you, Ino, he was helping you out." "A favor? Why he would leave to do me a favor is beyond me." "There is a war coming and Naruto isn't on our side this time," Gaara said, keeping his mouth shut as he gazed at the stunning sunset that was approaching. "They would attack here first, knowing you were here, and use you as leverage to get him to comply with their demands if he stayed with us and Akatsuki found out. Even I couldn't compete with the Akatsuki members. Over the last few months, they have become much more powerful. Knowing this, Naruto left to save us the trouble. But if he didn't want to fight us, why doesn't he just leave Akatsuki? Nothing anyone does will make Naruto's resentment of Konoha go away. For your protection and as a friend, I'm telling you this, Ino. You have to avoid Naruto. He follows a different route that is incomprehensible to most ninjas. If you have faith in him, he will come back to you." Ino whispered, Gaara, and noticed a few tears in his eyes. "You don't want to face Naruto either," she said. "I do not wish to fight someone who I consider my brother, but to protect my home, my precious people, I will do whatever is necessary," the powerful Kage said, shaking his head slowly. As she approached slowly, Matsui also whispered, "Gaara-kun," and gave her husband a tender embrace, both of them grinning. "I'll keep you safe, Matsui. I swear." Ino, unable to comprehend the situation, shook her head, wondering what that idiot of hers was thinking. She knew that he was aware of Akatsuki's plans, but was he really willing to go to such lengths to obtain power that he would sell his soul to do so? Was it really worth exacting revenge on those who had wronged him in the past? She was going to force that moron to talk to her, no matter what his arrangement was. A lone guardian stood in a fixated position deep within a remote mediation chamber, hidden from the outside world. This guardian, who was the 27th guardian and went by the name Himura, was sitting above the water with an open scroll in front of him, but it was empty to the naked eye. This sacred duty had been passed down from master to student for the past 200 years, and now it was his turn to fulfill it. Himura was almost there. The secrets of this scroll were almost ready to be unlocked. He just needed a little more time, but he knew that time was not on their side. Not at this moment. Sweat trickled down his brow as he continued to mediate. "They know where the gate and key are." Akatsuki was moving. No, his brain informed him. This was a delicate procedure that took time, and he could not rush it. Himura was shocked to see that the once blank scroll was gradually filling with text, with a map slowly emerging in the middle and text pointing to the key and gate's location beneath it. His eyes widened as he sensed something mystic moving along the scroll. Taking a deep breath, he smiled and said, "Not too shabby for an old guardian." Himura laughed and said, "It's time to assemble the key players. Kumogakure no Sato, Area 21 for mountain training. Raikage. Sama. Raikage. Sama. Important news. How many times do I have to tell you that I'm busy?" Always sighed and shook his head. "Can't you see that because you're so blind? However, Raikage. Sama, did I not imply that I want you gone from my presence?" The Raikage said, squinting his eyes and giving his Chunin a fierce glare. But. Aoi was irritated and said just two words that made many people afraid. Killer, B. The Chunin knew he had heard of this name based solely on the terrified look on his face. "So you heard of him," Aoi said with a menacing smile. "Chunin, this is your lucky day. I was going to be his sparring partner since he's looking for one, but since you're here." Duh. Demon. Before fleeing the training grounds, the Chunin let out a scream. "Hey! Who invokes the powerful Killer Bee's name? Hold on, that's me." All of the man's swords were thrown into the air, but they all fell perfectly into their sheaths when they did. "You idiot, nothing. Prepare yourself. Killer Bee, it looks like it's time to show off your abilities. Now is the moment to demonstrate to the rest of the world why Kumogakure is the best. Killer Bee is ready for anything at all times. You idiots simply forget that." With adrenaline pumping through his veins, the Raikage turned around and ignored his ultimate weapon, saying, "Soon, I will be known throughout this world as its savior." Are you alright, dude? Now don't be constipated on me. Killer B was sent through a rock after a fist suddenly appeared and struck him in the face. Don't test me, Killer B. I created who you are, and I can easily take that away from you. With a moan, Killer B said, yes sir, in 20 minutes, pick yourself up and meet me at the gates, we're leaving. Iwagakure no Sato. It was only a matter of time until they found him, so Shibata used his ninja skills to move slowly from one room to the next, making sure that his presence was undetectable and unnoticeable. He took one step at a time, his foot stepping lightly but quickly. Shien. Sama. Tsuchikage. Sama is on the run. Tsuchikage. Sama is on the run. A loud voice let out a scream. He must not slow down now. He must get out of here. Shibata winced a little at the loud voice. His cover was gone. Where do you suppose you're heading, my foolish husband? The voice was the height of evil, more evil than the Bijus themselves, and the Tsuchikage paled a little because he knew it too well. His mind screamed, don't turn around, Shibata, for heaven's sake. His body automatically defied his command to turn around, even though his mind was telling him not to. And there it was. The ultimate evil that cannot be defeated. His eyes met hers, and he let out a little whimper. Shibata replied in the most truthful tone he could manage, hello dear. You should be in bed right now. What on earth is causing you to move around? Goddamn you, woman. I am unable to be in bed. I must go, I'm being called for. Shien rolled her eyes and said, you old goat, your health comes first. She swiftly grabbed the odd coin he was holding when she noticed it. As Shibata attempted to reclaim the coin, his eyes grew wide. Give me that. The problems you're facing are beyond your typical comprehension. Additionally, you have to deal with a furious wife. Shibata, would you like to push me further? This is a matter of life and death, Shien, the man said, trembling a little but refusing to back down. I must leave. The fortress needs to fight. His wife angrily shook her head, saying, the fortress is now just a little mountain. Let Kenichi give it to you. It's time to let your son take care of things. But, Shibata whimpered. Kenichi, Shien yelled. Oh, you found him, said a young man in his early 30s who suddenly emerged from the ground. I appreciate you saving me the trouble, Mom. Shien threw the coin into her son's hand and grinned, saying, here, take this and go in your father's place. May Kami protect you, Kenichi. Please return to us undamaged. Kenichi merely nodded while gazing at the strange coin in his hands. Always mother. Father, I'll make you proud. Like his father, who was a legend among ninjas and was referred to by his enemies as the fortress, the young man turned around and marched away, answering the Kage's call. However, he did not follow in his father's footsteps. No, Hidekatsu Kenichi was a different person. He became known as Titan after his own achievement earned him that nickname. It was time to reveal Titan's true terror to the world, and he had been waiting for the moment to come when the rest of the world would hear his name. The boundary between Tsunade no Sato and Konoha no Sato. Jiraiya sighed happily as he sat at a table drinking sake. His previous concerns quickly vanished, and he realized that only he and sake mattered in this world. As he took another sip, he noticed that his nerves were gradually relaxing. This was the life. There were benefits to being a hermit. As he walked into the room where the Sennin was currently unwinding, Kakashi bowed and said, Jiraiya. Sama. Tsunade. Sama has asked that you come to her office now. All right, Kakashi, sighed the Toad Sanin. Thank you. After the copy ninja bowed and vanished in a cloud of smoke, Jiraiya smiled lustfully as he imagined himself in a room with Tsunade. Her. Him. Alone. He joyfully skipped to her tent, only to discover that she was actually with the Rookie 9. What is so important that you had to call me away from my sake, Tsunade? Jiraiya sighed as he stood beside Neji. Himura calls out to us. We should get together and leave now. We are just about at full strength with our army. Only about 45% of our ninjas, in my opinion, are prepared for combat, but they wouldn't hold up against Akatsuki for very long anyhow. No, we are not taking our army, Tsunade said, shaking her head. We'll only take a select few. I brought you all together for that reason. We are at war, and I can't put it any more simply. We have never encountered anything like this before. War Hokage. Sama, which nation are we fighting against? Neji inquired. Neither. We are battling Akatsuki and perhaps the greatest evil. Jiraiya laughed and said, the height of evil? Do you really think his story is true? Something seems off about it. Despite what Jiraiya said, I'm not making you guys fight. I'm looking for volunteers to go into battle with Jiraiya and me. I am not pressuring you because I am aware that each of you has a life that you cherish. Please come forward if you would like to join us. A chance to kill Itachi? Smirked Sasuke. If I have to, I will follow you all the way to hell and back. Still unimpressed by the Uchiha's statement, Tsunade simply nodded. Anyone else? TCH. Can't let the Uchiha say all the cool things. Kiba responded. You'll need us to watch your back. Kiba probably answered for the rest of us, but we will all follow you into battle, Hokage. Sama. Shino responded. I have a debt to settle with Akatsuki. Sakura interrupted, grinning. Remember that you need me as a medic, guys. Just don't get into too much trouble, okay? With a nod, Neji turned to face Hinata and said, we will also follow you into battle as well. Yosh. With his fist pumped into the air, Lee shouted, then Tenten and I will also follow you into battle. The fire of youth burns brightly inside each of us. We'll defeat Akatsuki together. Lee, Tenten mumbled, embarrassed by her teammates' behavior, but she still grinned and said, I will gladly join you, Tsunade. Sama. Jiraiya laughed softly, so it's resolved. In the morning, we'll leave. You will all go through something in the coming weeks that you have never gone through in your life, so get some sleep and make sure you are at peace with yourselves. All of your training, missions, and teamwork exercises that you have taken part in and completed. All for this. This is the point at which our ninja journey is defined. It is now your turn to experience what the great Hokages of Konoha did. Never give up and keep fighting until the very end. I am so proud of each and every one of you. You are the best ninjas Konoha has ever produced. That pervert certainly had a way with words. I couldn't have said it better myself, Tsunade said, grinning at her teammate's speech. Rejected. One by one, the renowned group gradually left the tent until only Jiraiya and Tsunade remained. How about him? Jiraiya inquired. The Toad Sannin didn't have to explain who he was because they both knew. Speaking his name was frowned upon in this community, and it was painful to bring up the past because so many memories were connected to it. With her heart pounding, Tsunade sighed, I'll handle him myself. I genuinely care about him, and this will be my last act as Hokage. I'll make amends because I made the error in the first place. As he whispered into the night sky, Minato, I hope you can forgive me for what I am about to do to your son. Kirigakure no Sato the Mizukage, locked away in a huge library that held an infinite amount of knowledge, rubbed his eyes and yawned quietly as he stretched his bones, but he never put down the scroll. He swiftly threw it away and picked up another one as his eyes quickly scanned its contents. It was pointless to scurry through his scrolls because they contain information about everything. It was only a matter of time. In his mind, he was only looking for a specific scroll that would help him win, but he had forgotten where he put it due to his inattention. There was a scroll in this library that would change the course of history and possibly lead them to victory. Sashiro ignored the coin that was vibrating on the table because it was far more important than answering that call. Where is that scroll? Damn it. The Mizukage mumbled, feeling his body aching for a nap as he rubbed his eyes, but he refused to give in. Shiro scanned the strewn about room, searching for places he might have overlooked on his little adventure. He was aware of who he was, a scholar, not a fighter, and he hated the way these ninjas threw themselves into battle to prove to themselves and everyone else that they were the strongest of all of them. However, strongest did not only refer to physical prowess, it also referred to mental toughness. When he accepted this position as Mizukage, he wanted to share his conviction that a perfect ninja needs both the body and the mind to be considered the strongest. Without the two, it would be like having a handle without a blade. Shiro was not a front-line ninja like his predecessors, rather, he was a strategist who repeatedly demonstrated his value by using his mind as a weapon to win battles for his village. Others had mocked him for being weak, but he was strong. He didn't have to prove himself to anyone. He would show them when the time was right. He understood human limitations and what happened when someone went beyond them. They would accomplish something that no one else had ever accomplished. Complete harmony. Shiro reached up for an old leather book that he hadn't touched in a few years, tossed aside another scroll, and sighed when he realized that this wasn't it. It was the exact opposite of what he was looking for. His only concern was finding the answer in time, but he knew that he would eventually find it. Base Akatsuki. What the hell are we waiting for here, ya? Deidara said, crossing his legs and placing them over the table. He glanced around and saw that everyone was lost in their own world, disregarding him and everyone else as they went about their own business. He sighed. Waiting for orders was boring. Pain. Sama had called a meeting 15 minutes ago, but the man was nowhere to be found. He noticed the woman who always hung around him sitting quietly in her seat, folding a piece of paper. He thought, odd. The demon brat isn't here as well. Conversely, Toby joyfully leapt to his feet and clapped his hands together, saying, I'm excited to get the meeting started. Toby usually sat with Deidara, bugging him about the most random things, but today he was more hyperactive than usual, and every member turned to stare at their most eccentric member, wondering what was wrong with him. How are you, Toby? With his arm extended toward his weapon, Hidan asked slowly, does Jashin need to talk to you again? Stupid people. Would your pitiful Jashin be able to stop me? Gods have attempted to stop me, but they have all ultimately failed. Everyone was caught off guard by the abrupt change in Toba's voice. It was no longer the whiny, comical voice to which they had grown accustomed, but rather one that was far darker and filled only with rage and hatred. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at him, unable to understand what was happening. Toby? Deidara inquired slowly, are you alright? Toby turned his head and sneered, Deidara, you worthless idiot, quit complaining and keep quiet. The killing intent was immediately released from Toby or whoever was inside Toba's body, according to the clay user. The moment has arrived at last. This is the moment. I can no longer hide in this pitiful body. Toby gradually took off his mask to reveal a face that no one had ever seen before, but what most astounded them was the object in his right eye. A Sharingan, Kakuzu replied slowly. Amazing, absolutely amazing. I believe that Itachi had murdered every member of the Uchiha clan. Surely you remember the history of the Shodem Hokage Kakuzu? Said the one with the orange mask, with a dark laugh. The individual with whom the Shodai engaged in combat at the Valley of the End. With his own Sharingan spinning quickly in his eyes, Itachi interrupted Kakuzu with, Uchiha, Madara. Could this man really be the renowned Uchiha Madara? The founder of his clan? The man nodded in response to Itachi's question, the Sharingan blazing brightly in his right eye. That's right. I've been lying in wait. I'm awaiting the ideal moment to introduce myself. Akatsuki was created for this reason because I was unable to move without being noticed. Zetsu hesitantly said, but what about Pain? Sama, he could sense the raw power emanating from this man, and the mere act of standing so close to him made his whole body tremble. Is he not the leader? Pain served only as a symbolic figure to divert attention away from me. He was only a stand-in until my plan was completed. He was not the real leader of Akatsuki. Akatsuki members. The location of the world's solution to salvation has finally been secured. Madara pointed to the map with a kunai and said, Oni no Kuni, salvation is within our reach. Everyone will soon be intimidated by Akatsuki's power. Unknown place names were crucial in the ninja world. They were the name of a weapon, a technique, and, most importantly, a person or group. Some people in this world could call themselves good, while others saw themselves as gods. God. To be divine. Madara turned his head sideways, happy to see that the others were still following him as they should, and grinned to himself as he concentrated on the idea of being omnipotent. The group didn't need to talk to each other, they just needed the will to follow orders. Hidan and Kakuzu trailed behind Madara, followed by Itachi and Deidara, and Konan and Zetsu trailed behind this group. As the second enigmatic member of their group, Zetsu kept quiet the entire way, remembering how every cell in his body trembled with fear the first time he had met Uchiha Madara. Everything about the man smelled of blood and murder when the orange mask came off, and it took all of the willpower not to flee into the unknown and vanish from the room. The death deity slowly tore out your soul, almost like you were looking the Shinigami in the eyes. His other half disagreed with him and asked questions that caused him to reconsider the entire Toby, Madara and Pain, Madara situation, despite his best efforts to convince himself that this man was Toby. His dark half remarked, something isn't right here. Where is Pain? Sama. Shall we not attempt to contact him? The lighter half said, I don't know. Is he really the head of Akatsuki, or is it Toby? I mean, Madara. Asking questions for which we have no answers only serves to further perplex us. We need to gather more details. Do you believe he is trustworthy? Since joining this organization, we have been faithful to Pain. Sama, and then this guy appears. What should we do, in your opinion? I think we should confirm our suspicions with Konan, sighed the darker half. She is with Pain. Sama all the time. It must be her if anyone should know. I agree. Zetsu then focused on the blue-haired woman who was traveling beside him, observing her intently as she took out small pieces of paper, wrote something on it, and then crumpled the paper. Konan, what are you up to? Zetsu inquired. Startled by the conversation, Konan looked up and pulled her arms back into her cloak, quickly recomposing herself. What do you mean, Zetsu? You can deceive the others with your naive appearance, but not me. I am intrigued at the moment and am aware of your skills with paper. It is none of your business, Conan sneered. You should learn to avoid situations that are beyond your level of understanding for your own benefit. Zetsu simply chuckled and stepped closer to her. Conan saw the man come toward her with a serious look on his face. How do you feel about Madara? With a low voice, Zetsu asked in a low voice. With narrowed eyes, Conan asked, Where are you taking this, Zetsu? You're walking on a dangerous path, she said firmly. Traitors are not taken lightly by Akatsuki. The man laughed once more, saying, Conan is always so serious. I consider myself to be loyal to Pain. Sama and Pain. Sama alone. That man is not my leader, in my opinion. It's exactly as Madara. Sama stated. Pain was merely a front, he was never Akatsuki's real leader. Zetsu's eyes widened at that. What? Tell me that you're kidding. I don't joke. After that, tell me what Pain, Sama thinks of this plan. It would be a shame to kill him off now, but Conan turned her head, sped up, and stepped away from Zetsu. The man was becoming too nosy for her comfort, and some things were better left unsaid. With a faint smile on his face, Zetsu observed Conan walking away from him and said, I think this confirms our suspicions. It does, indeed. She has some knowledge. When you asked her that question, I could sense how surprised she was. We should keep observing for now, too many unknown variables right now, we will decide when the time is right. I agree. Kuni no Oni, everything in Oni no Kuni was screaming out demon country, a place where only the wicked would stay. The members of Akatsuki landed on the ground deep within the mountains of Oni no Kuni, and everyone looked around the area, most of them having never been here before, gazing into the unknown with a bold mask of bravery. So we hear you? It took a long time, Deidara inquired. Yes, we're here, you idiot, Madara said, nodding his head. Why don't you keep your mouth shut and be silent for a moment? Deidara was about to respond when Itachi tapped him on the shoulder with a warning look in his eyes, and the former Iwa.nin immediately understood what that meant. Those damn eyes were the reason he joined this group and the reason he lost so humiliatingly. Sensibly, Deidara kept his mouth shut so as not to provoke the Uchiha's anger once more. When the group arrived at a sizable temple, everyone began to question their leader. Hidan tapped his partner on the ribs to get his attention, and after a single glance, Kakuzu understood what Hidan was asking. He was a man to be feared, and even he had heard of Uchiha Madara, the legendary warrior who dared to cross paths with the Shoden Hokage and survived. He could have more than 100 hearts and still lose. The nin simply shook his head, disagreeing with him. In contrast to that idiot Deidara, Hidan was learning quickly, using him as a reference before acting out, and the nudge and look he received from him confirmed his theory that defying his orders was simply suicidal and that he knew his place, to avoid upsetting the man. They might have been short one member if Itachi hadn't given him a silent warning. The doors to the inner chamber opened as the Akatsuki members silently ascended the temple's stairs, and a number of monks emerged grinning. Hello guests, what has brought you to our temple at this hour? We seek the entrance that you have been guarding. As the one in the center stepped forward and said, Sorry travelers, but we're just a group of monks that serve Kami in peace, the monks kept grinning. What you are asking of us is unclear to us. Son of a bitch, they're playing with us, snarled Hidan. Because he had another lord to serve, he was no less of a man than monks, and he never liked their hypocritical views on how religion should be conducted. He could still remember that moment when a monk told him quite bluntly that his god was not real. Needless to say, Jashin Sama was happy with the number of people who came to see him that evening. His blood boiled at the sight of the monk's arrogant expression, but before he could act, Kakuzu seized the scythe, stopping him in his tracks. Dude, what the devil? Avoid hurrying in just yet. Madara. Sama is here, but I detest monks as much as you do. We can't take any stupid actions. Staring at the group of monks, Madara simply grinned and said, Monks are protectors, I don't care which one you are, but you're blocking the entrance to the Rikudo Sennin. The monk's naive expression vanished in that moment, to be replaced by a solemn one. So you know what we guard, he said. You must then be aware of who we are. The 6 warrior monks of Oni no Kuni, but I think the title of monks is too good for your little group. The head monk replied, Hey, so you heard of us then, Akatsuki? Have you heard? Nope, replied Madara. I heard about the 6 missing nins who became monks, but I never heard of the 6 warrior monks. I vaguely remember the group referring to themselves as the Midnight Demons, but I can't remember their names. We cannot allow you to go, even though I am honored that a group like Akatsuki is aware of us, the Midnight Demons. We have been instructed to keep everyone out of this area. So I suppose there's only one way to fix this. Hello, Hidan Kakuzu. Get rid of them. Madara gave the order. It's almost time. Kakuzu, stand back. I'll personally offer them as sacrifices to Jashin. Sama, yelled Hidan. Even if you begged me to save you, Hidan, Kakuzu sneered. Will you worthless idiots finish it before I lose patience? Madara made a threat. Perish. With a roar, the Immortal One bounded toward the monks, swinging the scythe downward with the intention of impaling the head monk through the skull. The head monk looked at Hidan and said, "Let me introduce myself, young one. My name is Takumi Takahashi, the Mirage. You are nothing more than a sacrifice to Jashin, Sama." Sighing and shaking his head, Takumi said, "These young ones have no respect for their elders." Before Hidan could deliver his deadly blow, Takumi started to sway slowly from left to right before picking up speed, and 10 flawless replicas of the monk materialized in a matter of seconds. The Uchiha muttered, "Incredible," as Itachi's eyes widened as he watched the incredible feat. He's not using any chakra in his form. That is simply speed. With a downward swing, Hidan hoped to hit the right one, but to his dismay, the Takumi he struck was a mirage. Eternal punch. Hidan didn't know what hit him, feeling as though he was being punched in all directions, but Takumi yelled as all the copies mirrored the original. The head monk sent his partner flying, and Kakuzu sneered, "Way to go, Hidan. What a disgrace. How could you fall for such a thing?" As he slowly stood up, Hidan shot back, "Shut your mouth, Kakuzu. The fun begins now." Takumi-san, let us help you. Takumi shook his head and said, "Akatsuki is far stronger than we expected." He stared at the ground, stunned by the force of the blow, and he was certain that his body would have been splattered all over the courtyard if he had been struck with that. "Stand by and support me appropriately. We can't allow them to handle the body." "Hello." As they positioned themselves defensively at the door, the group responded. Hidan and Kakuzu suddenly leapt to the air, but before the monks could react, Kakuzu split into his 5 counter parts, surprising them. Hidan caught the monks behind Takumi off guard by quickly bringing the scythe sideways, which caused a minor wound on the monk's chest in the middle. The monks then dispersed, avoiding more attacks from Hidan. Takumi wanted to turn around, but he was unable to do so because he was confronted by Kakuzu's 5 masks, each of which snarled at him and revealed their faces. "Come on, monk. Give me a chance to see your heart." As Madara stepped forward, the other members followed, forgetting the battle, and Takumi caught a glimpse of them entering the temple out of the corner of his eye. He saw Kakuzu, or at least one of his masks, charging up for an attack, and took advantage of the opportunity to repeat his technique. Because of his ability to speed up his body and create flawless copies of himself in a matter of seconds, he was given the name Mirage. Although they weren't exact replicas, they were good enough to fool his opponent, and he used his speed to instill fear in his enemies and kill them before they realized the trick. Avoid them. When Takumi discovered 3 of his companions dead on the ground and the other 2 heavily fighting with the other member, he roared out, but his command went unanswered. He cursed his bad luck. What was going on here? The Guardians had assured him that this day would never come. Within the temple. Now what? Should we hold off until Hidan and Kakuzu were done? Itachi asked. Madara shook his head and said, "We proceed as I have planned. I don't need pointless garbage." As though looking for something, the elder Uchiha removed his mask and carefully scanned the ground with his eyes. It said that there was a button trigger on the floor that would open a secret passage, according to the scroll. Madara looked at the floor and then back at the scroll, growling in frustration because he was so close to his goal that he could almost taste it, and the damn riddles written on it were endless, and he wasn't in the mood for games. Madara suddenly slammed his fist into the floor, sending a shockwave across the floor's tiles. The floor shook as a tiny trigger sounded, and the panels on the floor started to open one by one, revealing a spiral staircase that led to the subterranean. The only person who was the idiot here was probably Deidara, but he should give the man more credit. Itachi noticed the slight smile on Madara's face as he stayed in the back, watching the man. He wasn't the only one who had doubts about the man. On the way here, he noticed how strange Zetsu and Konan were acting, and that was enough to put 2 and 2 together. If one were to think about it, the world was full of ignorant idiots, but Madara practically smelled of evil, and it would take someone who was extremely retarded to miss it. Then, like in the forest, Itachi saw that Konan was writing something on a piece of paper once more, and he turned to face her, his onyx eyes looking into her brown eyes. "Konan, what are you up to?" Konan calmly answered, "It is none of your business, Uchiha." You can deceive the others, but you can't fool these eyes of mine. Ignoring his stare, the blue-haired woman walked past him, needing no explanation. That was the second time tonight that people had shown interest in her. Despite her desire to bask in the attention, she could feel their eyes scrutinizing her intently, following her every action like a captive animal. This was completely incorrect. Himura waited for the others to catch up while perched on a rock on the edge of Oni no Kuni. A pair of chakra points came from the east, and another from the west, and he felt them all coming from the north. The plan was taking shape, and all the important players were coming together, and he couldn't help but smile. As her team, consisting of Jiraiya and the majority of the Rookie 9, landed in front of the Guardian, Tsunade said, "Hello Himura-san. We got here as fast as we could." Surprised to see so many people standing beside Tsunade, the Guardian looked up and said, "You brought a lot of people, Tsunade of Konoha." "Yes, I have. For this, these people were prepared to take any and all risks. I can't let them miss this chance to show everyone how good ninjas they are. I'll give them that they have guts, but they're also really stupid," Himura laughed. "Tsunade, you're prepared to put them in danger of dying long before their time. Very stupid, in fact." "What is the elderly man? I challenge you to repeat it. Come on, old man, if you have something to say it to my face," Kiba screamed, slamming his fist into the air. It took all of Kiba's strength to launch himself and attack the Guardian, but Hinata's restraint of him also helped. "Calm yourself, Kiba," Shino said. "It's pointless to be angry right now. We would be the only ones harmed if you hurt him. Our map is that man." "Oh, unlike your last visitor, Tsunade, you have someone who knows how to behave under duress." Tsunade saw that Himura was deliberately insulting them, judging them, and determining whether they were worthy of being on this mission. Jiraiya gritted his teeth, wanting nothing more than to join Kiba in beating the man. To her surprise, Jiraiya recomposed and held himself back. Not only that, but all of her ninjas were doing the same, demonstrating their maturation in front of her very eyes. Neji, his Byakugan activated, said, "Someone's coming near us fast. Another pair is also coming towards us at a fast pace. I believe it to be the Raikage." "Yes, that's roughly correct," Himura said with a nod. "Who is that man traveling alone, and can you tell me?" Neji shook his head and said, "I don't recognize him at all." A cloud of dust covered the man Neji could not describe as he landed in front of the group, and as soon as it cleared, the young man moved forward and cautiously looked around the group. "Can you see Himura?" "Don't know?" the young man inquired. "Depends on who's asking," was the manager's response. "I am Hidekatsu Kenichi, the son of Hidekatsu Shibata, the current Tsuchikage. I was sent in my father's place because he was unable to attend." Himura just gave a nod. "Son, do you have his coin?" "Yes, I do." Kenichi demonstrated it to him. "Thank you, but could you please introduce yourself while we wait for the others?" "Hey. I am Hidekatsu Kenichi, the son of the Tsuchikage, as I mentioned before." Kenichi bowed to the more experienced ninjas, saying, "It is an honor for me to be fighting with legends like you." "Kid, you honor us too much," Jiraiya said, simply laughing and dismissing it. "We have a common purpose for being here. This would have transpired differently if we had met in a different way." "I couldn't agree more, Jiraiya, the man known as the King of the Toad Summons and one of the 3 fabled Sanins. A lot of ninjas have grown to respect your story of training not one, but 2 legendary figures." The fact that the child, whom Jiraiya had assumed was just another brat, was able to quickly gather so much information about him made his eyes widen. It was a little startling and unsettling to hear Kenichi's words, but he continued by giving each member of Tsunade's team a brief biography of themselves. Information that shouldn't be that widely known outside of Konoha. Did he just give him a silent challenge? The brat wanted to play information war, huh? He wasn't going to take this lying down, Jiraiya thought, and he was going to show this brat who he was playing with. "I should just call you the Terrible Titan, but you're good, Kenichi. A man who is capable of surpassing his father in all his abilities. You gained a lot of notoriety by facing Sasori of the Red Sands alone before his death and, more significantly, by easily defeating your father in a battle not too long ago." It was now Kenichi's turn to express his surprise. Jiraiya of the Sanins was no slacker when it came to gathering information. All he did was issue a small challenge, and when it was accepted and blown wide apart, he knew he had met his match. His information network was completely different from this man's. Perhaps he ought to have rethought his challenge. It was evident that Tsunade was amused. The Gaki was only a century too young to be launching an information challenge against Jiraiya, the man who was known to a legendary network of conformists. She saw the silhouettes of the two people she never thought to see in front of her, and the way the two argued vaguely reminded her of a number of people. The Yondaime's ghost from when he was a new genin appeared before her, and then she saw Uzumaki Naruto. The Yondaime and Naruto were standing behind Kenichi, both of them wearing a small smile. Himura coughed, drawing everyone's attention, and said, "It seems like our last two members are here." The images that had flashed before her vanished a moment later as she jolted out of her reverie. There was a tremendous tremor on the ground as the Raikage and his warrior fell to the ground as he was finishing his sentence. "Killer Bee in the house," yelled the man beside the Raikage, raising his hands in the air. "Are you all in on that?" Aoi grumbled, "Shut up, Killer Bee, do not make me regret this decision." "Oh, indeed, I will remain as quiet as a cat." "Amusing," Himura replied, "but we're not in the mood for this. Shiro of Kirigakure and Gaara of Tsunade are the only individuals we are currently awaiting." "I don't think they're coming, Himura," Aoi responded. "I would have seen them when we left our village." Himura simply sighed and got to his feet, wiping the dust from his trousers. Then, "I suppose it's no choice. We're going to carry out our plan. There's no time to waste. Let's leave." To the Guardian, hearing a chorus of "yes" was like music. Yes, everything was coming together, and it couldn't get any better than this. Everything will be in motion soon, and salvation will return. Jiraiya and Tsunade led the way, and the group respectfully followed Himura as he took the lead. "I still don't trust that guy Tsunade," the Toad Hermit says. "He reminds me too much of Orochimaru, I could see it in his eyes." "We're working together to save the world, not destroy it," Tsunade snapped back. "Don't start that crap again, Jiraiya. If you could spend more time explaining that chaos theory to me." Jiraiya protested, but he knew she couldn't be convinced after seeing the obstinate expression in her eyes. "I'm being serious here, Tsunade." "Fine, but I'm keeping my guard up." Inside the holy temple. "What the devil happened here, holy crap?" As he attempted to shield his nose, Kiba yelled, "The smell of blood is so fresh and strong." Himura shook his head and waved his hand in front of the boy, saying, "Forget it, Hyuga." Neji automatically triggered his bloodline, searching the area for the intruders. "Inside that temple, you won't be able to see. Those like you cannot see inside because it is heavily guarded with specialized seals." Neji scowled and turned off his bloodline after realizing the Guardian was correct. "How do you know so much about this place, Himura-san?" The Guardian simply grinned and said, "You must be knowledgeable about the object you are protecting in order to be a Guardian. I just completed my homework." After being satisfied with his response, the group proceeded into the courtyard, but as they arrived, everyone's eyes widened in surprise. Sakura gasped when she saw one monk impaled through the wall with an odd circle surrounding him, and the other 5 monks lying in front of them with their bodies pierced through the chest. Admiring the devastation, Kenichi whistled and said, "This can only be the work of..." Before the boy could surpass him, Jiraiya responded, "Hidan and Kakuzu. These guys weren't ordinary monks." Kenichi smirked at Jiraiya and replied, "Nope, they were known as the Midnight Demons, a famous group of ninjas that terrorized Oni no Kuni a few years back." As the 2 Akatsuki members sat there, their eyes staring back at them, Hinata said, guys," gaining everyone's attention. "I think they're still here." She gestured to the steps. "Konochiwa people." Hidan greeted them mockingly, "How may I be of assistance to you today? Perhaps some spiritual direction?" "You monster! What have you done to these people?" Himura yelled angrily. Hidan retorted, "I played with them because they didn't want to play with me." "You guys sure took your time getting here," said Kakuzu, rolling his eyes. "I was growing bored while I sat here." "You monsters, all these innocent people. This was not the right way to kill them," Sakura yelled. "How about you get even with them?" Hidan got up and said, "Please teach me a lesson, Pinky." "Happy." Sakura cracked her knuckles and yelled. Tsunade commanded, "No, Sakura. You'll accompany us. You guys look after them, Neji, Lee, and Tenten." "Hello." As they moved forward, Team Guy responded, "This will be interesting." Neji responded, "Yosh. We'll show them our children's flames." Lee yelled as he used one arm to perform his taijutsu technique. He trained even harder, doing things that were thought to be impossible for a one-arm ninja, and he showed everyone that it wasn't necessary to have 2 arms to be a successful ninja, despite the fact that the man had taken away one of his arms since his last battle with Naruto. Tenten simply sighed and called forth her favorite set of blades, grinning as she gazed at her opponents. "Shikamaru told us a lot about you guys," she said. "Allow me to demonstrate why it is improper to interfere with someone's Junin sensei." Aoi commanded, Killer Bee, go help them. Alright, cats, it's time for you to see just how amazing Killer Bee really is. The tanned man jumped forward and stood before Neji, saying, Little Hyuga, don't stand in my way right now. Make sure that you don't get in our way, Neji said, mocking the man's pitiful attempt at a rhyme. I'll sting like a bee and fly like a bird. The group watched him dance around the enemy and said, right. As they moved aside, Hidan and Kakuzu grinned, making Himura question their real motivations. What are you two doing? Himura inquired. The boss told us to let you through, so that's what we'll do, Hidan responded. Come on. As the rest of the group moved on, Himura yelled. The actual battle outside had just started when the others entered the temple. Hidan licked his lips and picked up his weapon, saying, I like those odds, 4 against 2. I lost 2 of my hearts to that monk. I'll replace them with theirs. Neji gathered everyone for a brief group meeting and shook his head, saying, Lee, go with Killer Bee. I'm not sure how good he is, but he must be good if the Raikage brought him here. I'll have Tenten with me. While we take on Hidan, you two take Kakuzu. As Killer Bee smiled and said, this will be fun, one-armed dude, Lee nodded. Come on, let's dance. Gosh. Killer Bee.san. I see the flames burning brightly within you too. Tenten clutched her head and moaned as she left the pair, saying, oh god, there's 2 of them. My thoughts exactly, Neji replied. Akatsuki. Were the traps set up by you two? Madara's question was answered by the expressions on Itachi and Konan's faces, and each of them nodded to confirm it. Good, let us proceed with unlocking this barrier. As they watched, the mastermind behind this whole thing summoned an old bell that appeared so brittle that it might break with a single ring. Will the seal be unlocked by that bell? Itachi inquired. Why explain when you can see? Madara grinned. After the elder Uchiha approached the seal and gently rang the bell, everyone held their breath, anticipating a magical moment. The staircase event was dramatic and thrilling to witness, and they could only hope that this bell would summon something comparable or even better. They were disappointed when the bell's soft sounds had no effect. It rang, then broke, and most of the seals around the walls fell to the ground with ease. Deidara sighed as he picked one up and said, that's it. The whole shabam, what happened to the effects? Not everything in life has to be flashy, Deidara, Madara said with a laugh. However, art is amazing. As they passed through the barrier, everyone's eyes rolled, and when they reached the last room, they all widened. The legends were true, Zetsu said, not bothering to hide his astonishment. Itachi exclaimed, unbelievable, with a stunned expression on his face. Very unbelievable. The complete preservation of the renowned Rikudo Sennin's body. It seems like he hasn't aged at all. Yes, Itachi, the Sennin cast a strong spell on himself to guarantee his return to this world, and now is the moment to realize his destiny. Unknown components, his entire body was screaming for him to either stop this abuse or stop being crazy. 4 days after they began, Naruto has already broken all of his bones twice, and he grunted as he felt the force behind Pain's attack. He would have been dead by now, no, not even, when he joined this organization if it weren't for the healing factor of the Kyuubi. Damn that furball for granting him the capacity to recover more quickly than the average person. Pain watched the man lying on the ground in front of him from a distance. It was a very sad sight, but it wouldn't last long because he would be getting up in a few minutes and the training would start. He has been hammering Naruto into the ground and then some more for the past few days. Instilling those methods in his mind. Trying to instill those styles in his mind. This served as his last resort, his safety net in case everything else failed. As much as he hated it, he had to give Madara leadership after his demon extraction plan failed due to the death of the 8-tailed beast, and he couldn't back down. Regardless of how much he despises that man, it was a straightforward agreement. Pain would serve as the initial leader and carry out his plan, but if he failed, Madara would take over. The goal was to establish this group, known as Akatsuki, and bring salvation to the world. Both of them had the same idea to save the world, but they had different ideas, so he did it without arguing, even though it hurt. As much as she wanted him to be there for the occasion, he couldn't bring himself to be there, but based on what Konan could tell him from her small notes, they were already in the Rikudo Sennin's burial chamber and were about to revive him. He had been wondering how his plan had failed ever since that day, and these thoughts finally brought him to Madara, who was posing as Tobi and controlling the other members. He personally searched for the beast but was unable to locate it. Reports from the other members indicated that Madara's statement was accurate, but he could sense the power still present somewhere, lingering on the plane of the living. How did the powerful 8-tailed beast die so mysteriously? It seemed as though the creature had disappeared from the plains of the living. All of the tail beasts, with the exception of the Kyuubi and Hachibi, had their power extracted by him. He now had the Kyuubi in his grasp, but he was forced to face the reality that he no longer had the authority to lead them because the Hachibi was dead. However, that didn't mean he would take it easy. He was determined to see through the plans, even if it meant splitting off and forming his own group. Instead of some crazed madman who parades around wearing an orange mask, it should have been him, the man who stood on top of the world as its savior. Pain briefly closed his eyes in an attempt to keep Conan from seeing the message, but it was difficult to resist reading it given her capacity to send messages on that piece of paper. "Are you really that bored? No normal man could have survived this," Naruto remarked cynically as he forced himself to stand up from the ground. His breathing labored and the training conditions he had been subjected to insane. "I assumed you had passed away. The sight of you lying on the ground was so pathetic." Naruto growled back, "I didn't ask for this. Shut your face. You must have enough energy to begin your recovery if you have enough to talk." Pain threw a few soldier pills at Naruto, who caught them between his fingers with ease. "Are we finished here? Prepare yourself quickly and eat up. We are going to visit our visitors." It was time to see if Madara's plan was the one that was selected. With a cruel sense of humor, Fate threw everything at him to see if he was prepared to follow his chosen course. Pain's eyes opened momentarily, and he looked at Naruto, who was leaning against the wall and taking a soldier pill every 3 minutes. "Yes, I will witness with my own eyes how your plan will change the world, Madara." When Naruto realized that their training was over, he felt relieved because he could now finally unwind. Even for a guy like Naruto, those soldier pills were a wonder. Ever since the Kyuubi decided one day that he had had enough and disappeared, he had been alone again. Naruto felt a little easier as the familiar sensation of strength returned to his body and the tenderness of his muscles began to disappear along with these bruises. It was unbearably painful to watch the demon, no, companion, that he had known since birth abandon him. The rage he felt that day was beyond description. Particularly in light of everything he did for him. After spending hours honing a method that would allow Kyuubi some autonomy, the fox was able to turn the tables and give himself a permanent stay. The fox wasn't that clever, Naruto had to snicker to himself. The fox had to give up most of his powers in order to accept his permanent freedom, which came at a price too great to be disregarded. Q. Is this your definition of freedom? What good is peace if you don't have the power to protect it? The man muttered, unable to comprehend why the most powerful demon would sacrifice everything in order to live out the rest of his days in peace. Naruto shook his head, demonstrating that he did not comprehend the demon's reasoning. Temple underground, it was like deja vu, and Jiraiya rubbed his eyes for the umpteenth time as he gazed down at the endless halls, not understanding why they were not approaching. He was certain that he had already walked this path countless times. In fact, he was probably able to recall which floor tile had the most cracks. He was running out of patience, and it would be enough to drive anyone crazy to walk like this without talking. To get Tsunade's attention, Jiraiya prodded her on the sides. "Do you feel like you've seen this before?" As soon as she heard her teammate say, "Yes, I thought it was odd but I think we're," Tsunade agreed. "Genjutsu," Jiraiya responded, completing the phrase on her behalf. Tsunade looked back at the Uchiha, who were gradually making fissures in the wall, testing their theory. She said, "He's getting it. Uchiha, open your Sharingan and tell me what you see." Startled by the request, Sasuke looked up and grinned to himself. "So you felt it too, huh? We're trapped in a genjutsu, probably a strong one too if I didn't feel it," Jiraiya said, and the two nodded their heads. "They know we're here." Sasuke touched the wall, held up a single-handed seal, and whispered, "Kai." Tsunade then looked back at their guardian, who changed his frown into a smile, and she didn't miss it for a second. Even if the man could hide his emotions, she could see it in a split second. She silently thanked him as she watched him nod to the Uchiha, but that was the least of her worries. She had a persistent feeling in the back of her mind that Jiraiya was correct once more. God, how that man enraged her. Jiraiya walked past her slowly, and she knew right away what the man was trying to say as he rubbed it in her face in a silent, "I told you so, walk." She wants to give him a sly smile just once. "Now we should go on, Himura-san." With an overly kind tone, Jiraiya remarked, "I believe this was the main genjutsu trap they had." Tsunade tilted her head, curious about the man's intentions. At last, Himura led them past the circular maze, revealing a door at its end. "Hi," he said coolly. "Wow, do you sense it? This power, it's radiating from inside this room," always said, turning to face everyone and trembling a little. Seeing the fear in the man's words, the Hokage nodded her head. Himura approached the door with ease and opened it with a single swing. The group entered the building slowly, bracing themselves for whatever might be inside. The body, Kenichi muttered, gesturing straight ahead. Of the Sennin, Jiraiya concluded the statement. The legend himself, the Sennin's body, was there, soaking up the glory of the light after being left undisturbed for years. This room contained enough history to fill several books. Madara's voice reverberated throughout the room. I'm glad that you guys could make it. I was afraid that you were going to disappoint me by not showing up. The voice was so evil, so sinister, that everyone's defenses went into overdrive. When the man spoke again, it was difficult not to wince. A lot less than I expected. I guess you ordered a team to go against Hidan and Kakuzu Hokage. Stop playing games. Get your face out. I demand to see the face of the enemy that I am dealing with, yelled Tsunade. Each member of Akatsuki emerged one by one next to the Rikudo Sennin's body, but what was most unexpected was that the man wearing the orange mask stood directly between Konan and Itachi. He stepped forward and gave a cheer. Tobi. Uncertain whether that was his true name or not, Jiraiya inquired, having read about this member, the man who has the ability to bend time and space. Wrong. Jiraiya.san. Tobi never existed in the first place. I am, the man said, taking off his mask. Uchiha Madara, the name caused almost everyone's eyes to swell. How? Unable to comprehend the facts, Sasuke inquired. This man was the founder of his clan and was thought to be the only person in Uchiha history to ever obtain the Mangekyo Sharingan. The man was standing in front of them, breathing and living just like everyone else, even though he was supposed to be dead. Madara turned to face the Guardian and said, Himura, did you bring it? He took the scroll out of his inner pocket and said, Yes, my lord. I have it right here. Himura, what do you think you're doing? What the bloody hell are you doing? Aoi growled. Then give it to me, at once my lord. Himura said this without saying anything more and began to move toward the enemy. Tsunade whispered, I hate it when you're right, Jiraiya. I hate myself when I'm right too. Whose side are you on, Himura? Kenichi glared at the Guardian, his teeth clenched. Himura grinned and turned his head, saying, I never supported you in the first place. Since none of you will be around to make another decision, everyone simply assumed that I was on the side of good. This is a mistake that you'll probably never make again. Madara Uchiha simply grinned at them and taunted them to do something as everyone watched the man drop the scroll into his hands. Everything went according to plan Madara-sama. And now, the stage is set. There were only a handful of things in this world that Tsunade detested deeply and would never put up with. Perverts, debt collectors, and, worst of all, traitors were on the list. She hated traitors in particular. Of the entire group, they were the worst. Someone who would sacrifice their allegiance for something so material is what she defines as a traitor. Traitors were the cause of needless wars, and they would always be the ones to bring down the majority of civilizations. They didn't care who they hurt in the process to achieve their goals, and they had no remorse at all for what they did. Standing before her with their sworn enemies was Himura, the man she had once thought was on their side. A group of elite ninjas who were motivated by self-interest was known as Akatsuki. Tsunade growled, Himura, you no good, lying, dirty bastard, to be exact. She kept her composure despite the seemingly endless barrage of curses. She glanced around and quickly counted the number of their members. 7 members, she whispered behind Jiraiya's back. Naruto and Pain aren't here. Tsunade's suspicion was confirmed when Jiraiya blinked his eyes. That might be a blessing in disguise, Tsunade. If he was here, God knows we wouldn't be able to make it out of here alive. Like fresh meat to a pack of ravenous wolves, the Toad Sannin could see the members of Akatsuki staring down at them. None of them was taking any action to stop the murderous intent from simply leaking out. He caught a glimpse of Hinata and her group covering their fear out of the corner of his eye. Most likely, they also noticed it. There's no denying it, I suppose. For the first time, they took on every member of Akatsuki directly. Himura smiled and said, Come now, Hokage. Sama. Surely you're not angry about what I did, are you? You never really, what's that word I'm looking for here, asked. Tsunade blushed a little, but she didn't care because nobody made fun of her or got to boast about it. You were a guardian. There was no reason for me to question you. Dropping his grandfatherly tone, the former guardian responded, I could have been your worst enemy disguised as an ally and you still wouldn't have known. The tone of his voice abruptly became more mature, as if he had crossed over to the dark side. It doesn't matter anyway because none of you will be leaving here alive. Why you? Pulling her back, Aoi remarked, I knew you were a pathetic Kage Tsunade. Watch and see how a true Kage leads. The Raikage roared, his eyes and voice reflecting the man's rage. Himura, you're right. None of us will be leaving here alive because all of us intend to make this place your final burial chamber. He was going to repay this man twice over for all the humiliation he endured at his hands. The former guardian was eager to accept the challenge when he saw it. He prepared to fight the man with his fists clenched, but Madara stood in front of him and stopped him, in due time. With a snort, Himura moved aside and positioned himself beside Itachi. Madara attracted everyone's attention with a series of hand claps. He tilted his head sideways and gazed at the adversary. Sasuke-kun. The man exclaimed with joy. Won't you join us? Sasuke had a puzzled expression on his face. What exactly did he want with this freak? What? He growled. I have no business with a fool like you. Madara chuckled. I want to extend to you the hand of friendship, and offer to join us. His visible eye did not convey any foolishness about the man, even though he was wearing his fool's facade. His gaze was fixed on the youngest Uchiha, assessing his strength. Sasuke laughed. To join you? I would rather grovel at Gaara's feet first. Joining you would mean joining up with Itachi, and I'm not here to work with him. I'm here to kill him. The man turned around, shrugging his shoulders. Oh well, it's your funeral. Deidara said, we can kill them now, yeah. Tear them limbs from limbs and hang them by their necks. Madara gave a head nod. Kill them all. I want none of them escaping this place alive. With the utmost pleasure, boss. They each took a step forward, but instead of encountering opposition, they were confronted with a challenge. Don't take us lightly, Madara. All of us here are willing to lay down our lives to stop whatever evil you plan on unleashing into this world. Jiraiya yelled. I'm sorry, but I don't think you have time to speak, Jiraiya-chan. When Himura appeared in front of the hermit with a shunshin, his eyes widened. The man was obviously the real deal at this point and not just a pushover. Aoi lunged in Himura's direction and snarled, Get out of the way, you fool. That man is mine. Jiraiya obeyed dutifully. His intention was to prevent the ritual from taking place, not to argue with the guardian. He rushed forward, using them as a distraction, as soon as he saw a gap between Aoi and Himura's clash. However, before he could get past Himura, he was met with a forceful knee to the face, which sent him crashing into the wall. When he recognized Himura as the one who had knocked him back, a look of surprise filled his eyes. He yelled, Son of a bitch, as he felt the agony of it. With a snort, Tsunade rushed into the battle to support Aoi. You have taken much harder beatings from me. Don't tell me a kick like that managed to hurt you, she chided. With his back to them, Aoi hissed, This is my fight. Both of you get lost. Instead, I don't need your help. With his arms slightly extended, Himura declared, None of you will pass. The moment you pass me is the moment you die. The arrogant words he was uttering infuriated Jiraiya even more. Aoi, we're going to kill this piece of garbage. As he turned to admire Jiraiya's new attitude, the Raikage laughed. A toad working with the beast. Ahaha, I like it, he screamed. With the intention of murdering the man in front of them, they both rushed forward. Together, the two exclaimed, Together, we will show you pain beyond any mortal imagination. With a look of wonder on her face, Tsunade stepped back. Dear God, there's two of them. Sasuke's first action was to look for Itachi. He was here specifically for that reason. To murder the jerk who tormented him. He intended to ensure the man's death was gradual and agonizing. Itachi! Exclaimed Sasuke. Fight me! With his hands still inside his cloak, Itachi calmly answered. Still loud as ever, huh, Sasuke? The pair exchanged a scowl. You never did learn to control your emotions. Sasuke-kun! Yelled Sakura as she positioned herself next to Sasuke. Let me help you, I've been training for this fight too. He snarled. No, get lost, Sakura. Sakura was giving him a fierce look in return when he turned his glare in her direction. No, she hissed in response. Stop being a baby and let me help you. Itachi, who thought the exchange between this girl and his younger brother was funny, asked, Is there something going on between the two of you? I didn't know you had a thing for pink hair girls. You can mock me all you want, Itachi, but when it's all said and done, you're going to die. Sasuke replied. He pivoted and shoved Sakura in his direction. Don't make me kill you, Hirano. Your Hokage promised me this fight and I'll be damned if you cost me his death again. Sakura stared at him without knowing how to respond. She was rendered speechless by the way he spoke to her. Go help the Hyuga or something, you annoying woman. I don't a distraction around me. Fine. Sakura yelled, her teeth clenched. She hurried out of the room, but not before turning to watch Sasuke for the final time before he battled his older brother. "Be an ass and go get yourself killed." "I don't care," she exclaimed. She had a gut feeling that this would be the last conflict between the two. "Tenten!" Neji shouted frantically. The genius of the Hyuga clan, he made a mistake in judgment. Everything was going well at first, but then he discovered something that Shikamaru had neglected to mention. Hidan was capable of using telekinetic power of some sort. That's how he surprised them, by moving the weapon in the mind. He now had to pay for it. Tenten was lying on the floor in a pool of her own blood, right in front of his eyes. Unconcerned about turning his back on Hidan, Neji halted his attack and rushed over. At his creation, the cultist grinned. "Jashin. Sama will be so pleased that I sent him a beauty. Even if she was a bitch to fight." "Shut up," Neji said, giving Tenten's face a gentle pat. His fingers lightly brush against her cheeks, slowly. "Ah, what's the matter? Are you sad because I broke that bitch?" Hidan asked. "I said shut up," Neji yelled, breaking his composed demeanor. "I will make you pay, you bastard. I will make you pay 1,000 deaths." Hidan laughed darkly and his eyes widened. The man pleaded frantically, "Come then. Come and let me sacrifice you to the Almighty God of Jashin." Tenten's voice croaked. "Nay, gee, shush," was Neji's cool response. "It's going to be okay, Tenten. I'm going to send the bastard back to hell, so just save your strength." His heart was shattered when he saw his teammates smile. She put on a brave smile for him even though they both knew she wouldn't make it. He became enraged and cursed the man for removing his friend. "I'm going to kill him, Tenten. For you, so don't worry." Hyuga, who had previously been stoic, got up and approached Hidan. For his teammates, Neji was an indispensable man, but those who knew him for a long time would say he was a perfectionist or an insensitive jerk. They were the ones who knew him the best and were aware that he was a dangerous man. Neji revealed his actual strength the instant he let go of his stoic facade. No, it wasn't a profoundly concealed power. It was, in fact, a limit. Since he lost to Uzumaki in the Chunin exams and in the village, he has only pushed himself past his limits in private. In public, however, he has somewhat restrained himself. The immortal Akatsuki member watched Neji come toward him and grinned. "So you're going to avenge that bitch, huh? Let's see you try, you pale eye freak." Neji closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. Hidan clutched his death scythe and drew it back. Her blood tasted so sweet. "I wonder how yours will taste. Will you let me taste it?" The Hyuga gradually adjusted his arms to a different position. He opened his eyes to find Hidan running toward him, his weapon ready to strike despite his low crouch. Neji vanished before the weapon could reach him, allowing the weapon to strike the after image. When the immortal realized what had happened, his eyes grew wide. He twisted around and screamed, "What the hell?" Now the child was traveling faster than his own eyes could follow. He was standing there, waiting for him to hit, everywhere he looked. Neji's voice was unusual as he responded, "What happened, immortal? I thought you wanted to taste my blood?" Hidan became increasingly irritated as Neji vanished from his position every time he attempted to strike. Lee and Killer Bee, just across the field, were getting along much better. Smirking, Killer Bee smashed his fist through the third heart while perched atop one of Kakuzu's heart monsters. He heard his partner Lee yelling something as he watched the one with the lightning affinity gradually fade away from this world. He then used his left arm to impale the final one. Killer Bee started rapping, saying, "At the start, there were 3. But they weren't a match for me. Just 2 minutes ago, Lee made a straight line for thee." The Kumo man grinned and said, "And now, there was just 1. What say you, my friend? Should we finish this?" Lee said sadly, "As you wish." At the moment, he was too emotional to take action. He knew the worst had happened when he heard Neji shouting Tenten's name, but he was unable to abandon his fight. "You guys are just brats. How the hell are you brats able to fight on this level?" Kakuzu screamed. Lee entered his one-arm taijutsu style, the Goken, and responded, "We are the youths that have the will of fire burning within each of us." "Impossible." Kakuzu growled at something. "I will not be defeated by the likes of you." Lee swallowed and clenched his fist. Killer Bee shoved him aside before he could take any action. "B.San. What are you doing? Any true poetic master like myself can see that your heart aches. Leave this man to me and go tend to your fallen comrade. I will deal with him myself." Lee's expression changed from one of surprise to a faint smile. As he ran in the direction of Neji's location, he muttered, "Thank you." Kakuzu stared in surprise at Lee's retrenchment. Do you think you can take me on by yourself? Killer Bee gave a shoulder shrug. I don't have to think, you old fossil, I know so. Kakuzu exclaimed, die, as he thrust his arms out, causing the black thread to lash out. Killer Bee said, yo sir. Do you know who I am? At random. As he waited for the man to respond, he noticed the black strings approaching him directly. I'll tell you who I am Killer Bee, the keeper of the eight-tailed beast. As he finished speaking, Killer Bee raised his arm and started to change. Chakra began to seep out as the skin on his body began to peel off, exposing a deeper, darker shade of red. The change was finished in a matter of moments. Kakuzu saw something he could never have imagined, and he gasped a little. This man was the custodian of the eighth-tailed beast, which Madara Sama claimed had perished. He was not normal by normal standards. Since the Shodai era, he had lived through experiences that no ordinary mortal had, and he had become impervious to shocks, but this. He had been taken aback by this unexpected shift. The Akatsuki member was glared at by the beast in all its splendor, daring him to strike. Kakuzu considered his options: fight or run. If he ran, Madara Sama would kill him directly, but if he ran, he could find ninjas, accumulate his heart collection, and live to see another day. He had no chance of defeating the eighth-tailed beast in his form if he stayed and fought. The man saw the beast charging up for an attack before he had a chance to make up his mind. It compressed what appeared to be a vast amount of chakra into a tiny particle. He felt the power behind it, and his eyes widened. Hidan! Exclaimed Kakuzu. The eighth-tailed beast is alive. They all turned to see the enormous beast cowering in front of them. Hidan didn't need any guidance, so he turned in the direction his partner was pointing. In front of him, the tailed beast, famous creatures of legend, demons, was glaring at him. Oh shit. Lee and Neji gazed at the beast's recent arrival. Neji questioned, what the hell is that thing? But realized his partner was just as perplexed as he was. Gazing with his Byakugan, the Hyuga retorted, the chakra behind that beast is insane. He knelt down close to Tenten and mumbled, what the hell did we get ourselves involved with? Take Tenten and get the hell out of here. I have to finish my fight, he yelled to Lee as he gently picked her up. I can't do that, Neji. We shall finish the fight together. Neji shouted, Lee, don't be a fool. Get Ten out of here now, before Lee could react. The taijutsu expert hesitated, considering staying or going, but he knew better than to argue after seeing the expression in Neji's eyes. He mumbled, don't die on me. I'm a genius, remember. I will survive. Neji simply grinned as he picked up Lee's sword and gently laid Tenten on her arm. I'm going to borrow this for a while, Tenten. He held the weapon tightly in his hand. Get out of here while I'm covering you. Hidan grumbled. Why are you running? Surely someone from the mighty Hyuga clan wouldn't run from a small obstacle as that beast. With a chilly response, Neji held out the weapon and said, only cowards would retreat. I'm going to make you pay, even if it means being with you in hell. Fool, do you not get it? I cannot die. I thought I proved my point when I stabbed my own weapon through my own bloody heart. Neji calmly answered, I don't need to kill you to show you eternal damnation. He ran forward and swung, holding the kanajana in one hand. Hidan successfully blocked the blow by kicking out his weapon when he saw the attack coming from a mile away. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. What are you blabbering about? Asked Hidan, looking at his opponent with interest. 3 minutes before that blast is release. All I need is 2 minutes with you. Ha, I like to see you try it, you bastard. A young man approached Deidara slowly, intending to approach him, before he could demonstrate to everyone his admiration for art. Slowly, the Akatsuki member retreated while keeping his hand in the pouch. The young man inquired, are you by any chance Deidara, the former Iwa.nin? Of course. I'm the great Deidara. Sama. Deidara snorted as he inspected the child and designated him as his target. You here to learn some art, ya? Learn art? No, I'm sorry, but I'm here to kill you, the young man said, shaking his head. Kill me? Many have tried but none have succeeded yet. Wait a second, kid. Why do you look familiar to me? For a few moments, Deidara tapped his chin, wondering where he had previously seen that face. He asked casually, did I kill one of your friends or family before? Or did I do something to you and forgot to kill you? Evidently irritated, Kenichi gritted his teeth. You truly are the clueless dumbass that everyone knows. Say that again. I dare ya. Deidara shot back, one hand clutching a clay bird. Screw your name. I don't need to know it when you're dead. I am Kenichi Hidekatsu, you gutless moron. So that's where I remember you from. I met your pipsqueak ass back during that family picnic. You sure were an annoying little prick of a cousin then. Guess it runs in our blood, cousin. Deidara said, her eyes widening and gradually turning into a smirk. No, you are mistaken. It only runs in my blood, Kenichi said in a whisper as his eyes grew icy. The renowned Tsuchikage's son slammed his whole body into Deidara's in an instant, sending him slamming into the solid wall. Kenichi twisted his body, pulling his shoulder back. Immediately, his arms dropped, and he was hit in the nose and gut. Kenichi pounded his opponent like a furious beast, showing the man no mercy. When his so-called cousin broke his nose, Deidara moaned in agony. "Why, you son of a bitch!" exclaimed the former Iwa.nin, reaching up to seize Kenichi by the face. "I'll teach you not to mess with your elders. Eat this." A tiny clay bird landed on Kenichi's chest after leaping out of the pouch. "Hello, my little friend," Deidara laughed ominously. As the little bird approached, Kenichi observed. His eyes grew wide as he sensed that it was getting warmer by the second, and he clutched Deidara's wrist until the man had to let go. Art is a bang. The bird gave a little chirp, and there was a huge explosion. Knowing that his cousin's chest was most likely burned and on fire, Deidara grinned when he heard him scream in agony. Deidara continued to hold Kenichi's face with his arm, then gave his cousin a massive headbutt that sent the young man reeling back. With his chest burning and the air being forced out of his lungs, Kenichi did the only thing he could do: fall to the ground and gradually get better. When he first heard about Deidara's methods from his father, he thought they were just mild explosions, but he had no idea they would be this potent. With his hand extended to create another C4 model, Deidara exclaimed, "I remember kicking your ass when we were little, and just look at us now. I'm still kicking your ass. By the way, how's the old man doing? Is he even alive? He sure as hell took my ultimate attack head on." Deidara continued to rant and boast about defeating the man, but he was unaware that his opponent was not paying attention to anything he was saying. "The fortress, that's what they called my old man." When the clay user saw that Kenichi was slowly rising, he halted his tirade. He could clearly see the blood on his face and the burnt flesh on his own flesh. What? His defense was something to admire. Nothing short of a huge explosion could make a dent in his armor. The Tsuchikage's son forced himself to stand up with all his might. Kenichi asked his cousin, "Do you know what a titan is?" "A titan? Is that what they call you?" Deidara asked, laughing as he conjured up a tiny giant that looked like a titan in his hand. "Something like this?" "No, a titan is like a juggernaut, someone who is unstoppable once started." Deidara saw in wonder as fragments of soil rose into the air and adhered to Kenichi's skin, feeling a tremendous rise in his chakra. What the? He was speechless for the third time in his life. Was he unaware that this was a unique bloodline? This was simply unfeasible, almost alien. He had never in his life seen anything so repulsive, nothing more repulsive than Zetsu eating a whole death. In a matter of seconds, dirt, pebbles, and pretty much anything that came from the ground covered Kenichi's entire body, from head to toe. Chakra surrounded his body as he closed his eyes and clenched his fists, and everything started to blend together to form a light bronze armor. "Feel the power of the Titan, cousin," Sakura shouted, "Hinata," as she landed next to her friend. "Can I give you a hand with her?" Konan gave the newcomer a scowl. She batted her eyes, realizing that her opponent was a formidable foe and the apprentice to the fabled Slug Sanin. Even though the Hyuga was dangerous on her own, she was obviously outclassed. With courtesy, Hinata answered, "It will be an honor, Sakura-san." She returned her focus to Konan. "Will you forfeit this match, Akatsuki-san? You were hopelessly outmatched before, and now, you have no chance of winning. Surrender and we will promise that no harm will fall on you. Choosing to ignore my offer will only lead to death. It's your choice." Konan laughed. "Even the smallest paper can leave you with a cut. Do not underestimate me or else you'll find yourself dead." Sakura cocked her fist back and yelled, "Enough talk." She leapt into the air and struck the ground with her fist, creating a tiny crack. She realized her error when Konan jumped up and appeared unimpressed. The Hyuga used the fissure as a diversion to position herself for attack. She swore at herself for being so inexperienced. Konan held out her arms as the Hyuga approached, and in a matter of seconds, Hinata was blinded by the millions of rectangular papers that flew out. With her eyes narrowed, the Hyuga mistress calmly held out her arms and said, "Shugo Hake Rokujui Ensho." Sakura gazed in awe as her gaze followed the once-shy girl's elegant and fluid movements. Sakura thought, "Hinata, you really are your own woman." Hinata's arms began to move on their own, and she told herself, "I have to stop her at all cost. I cannot fall here." She refused to budge as millions and millions of dollars flew in her direction. In a matter of seconds, the once bright papers gradually lost their edge and drifted to the ground. As Conan's body returned to normal, blood poured from her mouth. She squinted at the serene Hyuga girl who was standing there with a proud expression. Hinata's soft voice finally raised its voice. I ask you once more, Akatsuki-san, will you surrender? Using the back of her hand to wipe the blood from her mouth, Conan answered, we have suffered too much to give up here. We have suffered greatly and we have sacrificed many, but one thing is for sure, we will not be giving up here. Sakura replied, I will grant you a swift death. The medic rushed forward, her fist cocked back, aiming for a quick kill. Spoken like a true ninja. Her body was failing her as she saw her opponent on the ground, but her eyes were different. They seemed almost unwilling to give up yet. Sakura shrewdly leapt out of the way when she noticed her palm twitch a little, drawing Hinata's interested attention. Then Sakura said, her eyes, they're not the eyes of someone giving up. Conan muttered, that's because you're right, I don't intend to give up just yet. She swiftly raised her fingers in the air and began sealing. She's summoning Seal Sakura, exclaimed Hinata. Sakura responded, I know, and was already moving before Hinata yelled. Because she already had the extra chakra in her legs, she was able to reach the Akatsuki woman before the summoning was finished. Sakura shouted, you're finished, and threw her fist forward. When Conan heard the loud voice, her ninja senses were warning her to dodge the impending attack, but it didn't matter because the only thing that mattered was getting this final seal done. Thank you, she said, slamming her palm to the floor with a slight smile. Despite the smoke rising from the ground, Sakura persisted in swinging her fist as forcefully as she could. She would smash her fist through anything, regardless of what emerged from the smoke. Well, isn't this a sight for sore eyes? It's just like deja vu all over again. Sakura could only gasp as her eyes widened and she felt a chill go through her body at the sound of that voice. The unexpected visitor's appearance caused everyone in the room to halt their battle. As the smoke cleared, the sound of footsteps reverberated throughout the battlefield, causing some people to feel excited and others to feel afraid. But one thing was certain. There was a sense of surprise in the air. Let the pain begin.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.